Welcome back, Naruto fans. Today we're going to explore what if Naruto became the Iron Jinchuriki under Ebisu's training and surpassed every Genin. But before we begin, I just want to tell you guys something. The reason I'm not able to upload videos regularly is because these videos take a lot of time to make. Honestly, it really takes me a lot of time to make these videos, especially the editing. So before the video starts, make sure to leave a like. And if you want part 2, don't forget to comment below. I genuinely put a lot of effort into making these videos, so one like would really mean a lot. Now then, without wasting any more time, let's begin. Naruto snickered, eyeing his target with barely suppressed glee. That statue was totally stupid looking and didn't belong in this awesome park. He'd stumbled across it maybe a month ago and was awestruck. All the bushes were carefully sculpted to resemble famous animal summons that had belonged to Konoha ninja over the decades. Each was larger than a full-grown adult and had a small engraved plaque naming what clan the summons belonged to and which ninja had possessed their contract. He must have slept through a really cool class sometime in the academy, because he'd never heard that the yondaime could summon toads. Naruto wasn't entirely certain how toads could be used in battle, but they must have been pretty damned useful if the yondaime had bothered with them. Naruto had stuck around for a while, admiring the bushes, until a grizzled old man with a cart of gardening supplies arrived on the scene. Awesome timing. If this old guy was responsible for the bushes, maybe he could give Naruto some tips on how to do the same with his own plants. "Hey, mister!" Naruto had shouted with his trademark exuberance. "Are you the one that works on the bushes around here?" The old man's head snapped around to face Naruto and his face immediately drew up into a snarl. Oh, it was another one of those folks. Years of experience had conditioned Naruto to what was sure to come next. "What the hell are you doing here, you little monster?" ground out the old man, reaching into his cart for a pair of well-honed shears. He waved them in Naruto's direction threateningly. "Get out of here. Go on. I won't have you ruining all of my hard work." Momentarily disheartened and his good mood ruined, Naruto didn't make a scene. Quietly slipping away, he headed back toward the academy, plans for revenge already percolating in his mind. The old gardener should have known better. Now Naruto was back for revenge. The seal tag he'd been saving for months was tucked safely in his back pocket. The shopkeeper who sold it to him guaranteed that it would release a huge cloud of orange paint when triggered. It took only a few seconds for him to scramble up to the top of the statue and place the tag. A spark of chakra to prime it, and he should have plenty of time to get Awadash. Crumped. The pain lasted only the barest moment before Naruto's world went black. Yes, I can work with this. Sitting behind his desk, shoulders stooped with weariness, Sarutobi Hiruzen felt every one of his 66 years. A young ninja in their physical prime would have been hard-pressed to make the trip from the capital city of Fire Country to Konoha in 6 hours. After receiving notice of Naruto's injury via summon messenger bird, Hiruzen had done so in 3. His bones ached and his muscles burned, and he would have liked nothing more than to succumb to his exhaustion. If the gods had any mercy, when he woke, it would be to discover that the past day had been nothing but a nightmare, one of the many he'd accumulated in his long career as a ninja of Konoha. Were others not present in his office, Hiruzen would have at least been able to indulge in a pipe of tobacco to soothe his nerves. But he feared that doing anything beyond clenching his gnarled fists would reveal the tremors he'd been unable to control since first learning of the incident. Hiruzen was the Hokage, the effective military dictator of the village hidden in the leaves, and he could not allow his subordinates to see his weakness. "Your report, Inu." Dogmasked Anbu Captain Hatake Kakashi bowed once and said, "Hokage-sama. As you know, we initially responded to reports of demonic chakra detected in the eastern civilian district. Upon arrival, initial evidence suggested the detonation of a high-yield explosive tag or a fire technique of at least mid-C rank, leveling much of a small topiary garden. The explosion apparently caused the partial collapse of a previously unmapped bunker. It was in the bunker that we discovered Naruto Uzumaki, impaled through the abdomen by a large metal spire." Kakashi paused, as if considering his next words. "My medical expertise is limited, Hokage-sama, but I have seen more than my fair share of battlefield injuries, and Naruto's were undoubtedly fatal. If not for the Kyuubi, whose chakra initially led us to the bunker, Naruto would have succumbed within moments. Where were Naruto's minders during the events that led us to this situation?" The urge to assign blame was strong. Hiruzen pushed it aside with effort and waited for a response. Kakashi tensed briefly and Hiruzen got the impression that the silver-haired Jonin was scowling behind his mask. Naruto has grown quite adept at slipping the proverbial leash, sir. From my own inquiries, I can only assume that he deliberately lulled his ANBU escorts into a state of complacency. For the past 2 weeks, Naruto has not deviated from his normal routine to any great extent and has limited mischief to classmates and academy faculty. Once their guard was dropped, Naruto was in the wind, so to speak. Hiruzen mentally counted to himself, slowly working backwards from 10. There was no sense in allowing his anger to consume him at the moment, even if he very much wished to break open the heads of the so-called elite operators of his village to check whether or not their skulls were empty. To be outwitted by a poorly trained and not terribly bright 10-year-old child. It was just disheartening to discover that his ninja could fall so far. With a sigh that revealed none of his contempt or suppressed rage, Hiruzen spoke. We will discuss that matter at a later date, Inu. I apologize for interrupting. Please continue with your report. With that very minor disaster averted for the time being, Kakashi continued. I immediately dispatched a runner to acquire medical assistance from the hospital once it was determined that Naruto was still alive. Nico attempted to check Naruto's vitals, but was burned by the cloak of demonic chakra enshrouding Naruto. I unsuccessfully attempted to give Naruto a blood-replenishing pill. Kakashi brought a bandaged hand from behind his back. Though the burns we received are relatively minor, the demonic chakra disrupted Nico's diagnostic technique and rendered the blood pill inert. Roughly 3 minutes passed before medics arrived. And here was where things started to get really weird, and that was on a scale that already involved a child with an all-powerful demon sealed in his gut. In that short span of time, it became apparent that the Kyuubi was not only sustaining Naruto despite his injury, its chakra was also interacting with the spire that had inflicted the injury. The spire was visibly shrinking, almost as if being melted. Did you by chance view this process with your Sharingan? Hiruzen queried. They were getting to the crux of the matter now. The Kyuubi should not have been able to interact with the outside world. Not at this point in time, and definitely not before Naruto consciously accessed its chakra. He and Jiraiya had studied the seal imprisoning the demon and pored over Minato's notes on the subject. Never had they come across any such possibility. I uncovered it the moment we entered the bunker, sir. Kakashi's implanted Sharingan. I did not possess the Byakugan's ability to perfectly discern chakra, though it did provide some measure of enhanced chakra perception. And what did it reveal? Hiruzen prompted Kakashi. The seal itself was visible as a chakra construct and appeared intact, sir, though the flesh it was engraved upon was pierced almost directly through the center and torn away. At the time, we assumed the Kyuubi was working to dissolve the spire in an attempt to save Naruto. Kakashi did not likely attribute any altruism to the demon, Hiruzen felt. He knew that Naruto's death signaled the end of his tenant. Though he would have preferred to question Kakashi further, Hiruzen felt his remaining chakra wavering. There wasn't much left in his coils after his mad dash back to the village. Very well, Inu. Please continue your investigation. I want details on this heretofore unknown bunker Naruto discovered. Age, contents, creator, and so on. On your way out, inform my secretary to send any representatives from the hospital directly to my office, so long as they are bringing news of Naruto's condition. Kakashi bowed and disappeared from the room in a wordless body flicker. Hiruzen retrieved a soldier pill from an inner pocket of his robe. He'd taken 3 so far today. Given time elapsed between doses, his age, and relative chakra capacity, he should be able to ingest 2 more before risking poisoning or permanent damage. The pill had barely passed his lips when a ninja in the garb of the medical corps hurried into his office. Mitate, if he recalled correctly. Mitate, your timing is excellent. I do hope you have good news to give me. The medical ninja bowed deeply. Yes, Hokage-sama. I bring good news. The medic's complexion was pale and the dark bags under his eyes looked almost like bruises. As he felt the 4th soldier pill of the day begin to flood his coils with chakra, Hiruzen envied the man's simple fatigue. The patient is now in stable condition in a medically induced coma. It was touch and go for a while, but once the demonic chakra fully receded, we were able to begin administering blood transfusions. You had to induce a coma in Naruto? That was odd. If anything, Hiruzen would have assumed Naruto would require assistance to regain consciousness, not the other way around. It was necessary, sir, to avoid what could possibly be catastrophic damage to the patient. Mitate withdrew a small scroll from his coat and placed it on Hiruzen's desk. The full details of our findings are recorded on the scroll for your perusal, sir. To summarize, through an unknown method, though the QB was obviously responsible. A huge quantity of pure unalloyed chakra conductive iron has been absorbed directly into the patient's body. It was rare to encounter any significant quantity of the substance, as it was fantastically expensive and coveted by ninja the world over. The metallurgical secrets required to properly alloy chakra conductive iron into weapon-grade steel were closely guarded by the few smiths with necessary skill to work the metal, most of whom resided in Iron Country. My Tate no doubt noticed Hiruzen's raised brows and puzzled expression. Before his Hokage could ask, he continued, "The patient's bone matter has either become coated in a layer of the metal or entirely replaced by it, though his chakra density and other extenuating factors make it impossible to know for certain at present. It is too early to tell what impact this will have on the patient's future well-being. Of more immediate concern, however, is his chakra network and musculature. We found that a great deal of muscle tissue has been replaced by a fibrous weave of the chakra conductive iron, including the heart and diaphragm. These fibers, for all intents and purposes, appear to function as regular muscle tissue so long as an abundant supply of chakra flows through them. And that brings us back to the patient's chakra network itself. I would have been here to deliver the news sooner, sir, but we had to wait for a Hyuga to come on duty to confirm our suspicions." The creeping horror Hiruzen had felt building during the medic's explanation of Naruto's condition, what exactly warranted a label of stable nowadays anyway, was reaching a crescendo. He was too old for this shit. "The patient's chakra network is completely intact," My Tate said, momentarily easing Hiruzen's concerns. "But every coil and all 361 tenketsu are totally saturated with chakra conductive iron." Hiruzen found himself at a loss. This situation was so far outside the realm of what he would have considered possible that he simply didn't know how to approach it. He wasn't even sure what questions he should be asking the medic standing before him. Finally, he settled on a quiet, "And the coma?" "Ah, yes, sir. While the patient's altered musculature and chakra network appear to be functional for the moment, we cannot safely predict what would happen if he were to make any sudden movements. Muscles could be shredded by the iron, or his very chakra coils could tear themselves from their moorings in his body. At first glance, you would never think the small boy in the hospital bed had been fatally injured less than 48 hours previously. There was no complex medical equipment or arcane regenerative sealing arrays present, and if Hiruzen had not been informed otherwise, he could easily have assumed that Naruto was sleeping peacefully. If he drew back the sheet covering the boy's torso and extremities, he would find no scars, just unmarred flesh and, if the report was accurate, a carapace-like exoskeleton of chakra conductive iron coating more than 2/3 of Naruto's body. The medical report crumpled in his clenched fist as he recalled its contents. According to Academy-sanctioned physical examination, carried out by on-site nurse on October 7th, subject Uzumaki Naruto measured 116 centimeters in height and weighed 28.7 kilograms. That was barely 3 weeks ago, right before Naruto's 10th and nearly his last birthday. Diagnostic array suggests approximately 25 to 30% of subject's biomass consumed by foreign chakra influence. So much of the little boy burned away by the vile creature imprisoned within the Yondame's seal. Subject's current weight measured at 77.2 kilograms, perhaps as much as 57 kilograms of chakra conductive iron fused with so little flesh. If his memory served, the current market value of the rare metal was hovering a bit over 1,000 ryo per gram. Hiruzen felt nauseous as he considered just how many people, even citizens of his beloved village, would be blinded by greed if this information became public. As if Naruto's life had not been difficult enough to date and didn't promise to be full of even more adversity in the days to come. "Old man, Hokage, you kinda look like crap," rasped the unmistakable voice of Naruto, startling Hiruzen from his inner thoughts with a jolt of adrenaline and fierce joy. The coma technique had been counteracted at Hiruzen's command, but only over the hearty objection of the duty medic. The medic ninja on duty finally settled on a compromise, refusing to leave the room until the Hokage inked a powerful paralysis seal and applied it to Naruto's forehead. No one truly expected the boy to regain consciousness so quickly after such a traumatic experience, despite his literally inhuman constitution. Hiruzen allowed himself to chuckle at Naruto's disregard for propriety. So few in the village would dare speak to their Hokage in such a manner, and those certainly didn't have any affection for him. Spirits momentarily lifted, he spoke. "I imagine I do, Naruto. The past 2 days have been most trying for these old bones. Nothing I can't handle," Hiruzen assured the bedridden child, forcing his voice to sound more cheerful than he felt. "You don't look so great yourself. How are you feeling? Thirsty?" Hiruzen was in motion as the word passed Naruto's cracked lips. He held the straw in place for the boy and forced him to take small sips until the cup was drained. Thanks, old man. Think nothing of it, my boy. Am I paralyzed, old man? Naruto asked after a short span of silence. I can't move at all. No, nothing so horrible as that, Naruto. You are simply under the effects of a paralysis seal. It's just a minor precaution to prevent you from accidentally exacerbating your injuries. Oh, that makes sense. If I was really paralyzed, I doubt that everything would be hurting so bad. Naruto's eye crossed and he asked, now that I can't move, my nose is starting to itch. Never one to turn away a villager in need. Hiruzen reached across the bed and helped Naruto with his problem. Do you remember how you came to be in the hospital, Naruto? You were found in a most curious location. Yeah, I think so. Hiruzen was well acquainted with Naruto's shifty expression by now, having had more experience than most with his mischievous young friend. Do not fear, Naruto. You are not in trouble, I assure you. Well, if you promise. Hiruzen nodded encouragingly. I was going to use this awesome paint tag I've been saving since summer to get back at this Asher mean old dude. I bet he would have flipped out when he showed up and found that ugly old statue turned orange. Naruto grinned widely, baring his teeth and squinting his eyes tightly. Hiruzen had last seen that expression a week ago when he just barely avoided sitting on a comically large tack. Naruto managed to slip onto the chair in office. Something didn't work right, though, 'cause I think the tag blew up. That sure explains why I'm laid up here in the hospital. I must have used too much chakra to set the tag. Hiruzen made a mental note to look into who had decided to illegally supply high-grade demolition seals to a miner. There was no such thing as a paint tag after all, and ANBU had determined definitively that the explosion had indeed been caused by an explosive tag, a rather large one. The explosion certainly contributed to your extended stay in the hospital, Naruto, though whatever damage it inflicted on you has already been healed. Confused by that response, Naruto asked, if they've already got me fixed up, how come I'm stuck in this bed, old man? How does one explain to a young boy that he may be crippled for life? Never mind that his budding career as a ninja could be over before it ever truly began. Finally, after an uncomfortably long silence, Hiruzen answered, Naruto, I want you to understand that you are a very special boy, unique even. 2 days ago you survived an injury that would have killed anyone else. Naruto's frightened gulp was clearly audible. If that crappy paint tag blowing up didn't hurt me so bad, what happened? The explosion collapsed the roof of a long-forgotten bunker, situated directly beneath the park you were attempting to vandalize. Naruto. Hunkering down in the uncomfortable hospital chair, Hiruzen settled in and began to explain Naruto's new circumstances in greater detail, hoping the news would not break the boy's spirit. Hokage-sama, you summoned me? The special Jounin standing stiffly before his desk in the Hokage's office presented himself. Ebisu, please have a seat, Hiruzen said, gesturing to a nearby chair. Thank you, sir. Kunugi Ebisu was a skilled ninja, of that there was no doubt, but his expertise was not as a frontline combatant, infiltration specialist, or assassin. Instead, he was an exceptionally intelligent young man known for his great knowledge and the proficiency with which he passed it on to other ninjas. Glancing over the open folder before him, Hiruzen addressed his ninja. Ebisu, I must admit that I have had your background vetted quite thoroughly. Few ninja instructors receive such glowing praise, and every individual you have tutored in the past 10 years, when independently interviewed, report that your efforts greatly benefited their progress in the ninja arts. I am most impressed. Hiruzen would never call attention to it, for fear of mortifying the stoic ninja, but the slight embarrassed flush that rose to Ebisu's cheeks was amusing. I am flattered, sir. If anything, Ebisu seemed to be trying to sit up even straighter. Hiruzen nodded, then continued. My original intent was to eventually offer you a position as a private tutor to my grandson Konohamaru. I dislike showing such favoritism, but there are appearances that must be maintained, as I am sure you are aware. While I would like to keep that option open for a later date, I have a new proposition to make for you. I assume by now that you have heard news of the injury suffered by the Jinchuriki of the Kyuubi, Uzumaki Naruto. Ebisu frowned very slightly, but he didn't display the open contempt most Konoha civilians and many of Hiruzen's ninjas held for Naruto. I have heard a number of conflicting rumors on the matter, sir. Some of the tales are more difficult to believe than others. Most, however, do agree that the boy was injured so severely that only through the intervention of the demon was he able to survive. They are not wrong on that account. Hiruzen went on to briefly explain Naruto's condition and the concerns held by the supervising medics overseeing his treatment. I would like to propose a long-term mission for you to train Naruto to overcome his recent injuries and the disability stemming from them, Ebisu, with myself as the client hiring a ninja of Konoha, not as your military commander. As a voluntary mission, you may choose not to accept it and there will be no negative consequences for you. In fact, no one outside of this room shall ever hear of it if you desire. This would be considered an ongoing B-rank mission, subject to pay on a bi-weekly basis. Every 6 months completed during a period of up to 3 years will accrue the equivalent of an A-rank mission. At the end of the 3-year period, if Naruto is able to join the ninja forces alongside his peers currently in the academy, I will include bonus pay equivalent to an S-rank mission, though I will not be able to mark that as an actual S-rank in your dossier. The terms were incredibly generous, Hiruzen knew, but he could afford it and he felt he owed Minato at least this much. By the time Hiruzen had completed his offer, Ebisu's dark eyes were wide and his posture had lost its stiffness, too surprised to maintain. A successfully completed 3-year-long B-rank mission and 6 A ranks would be a true boon to his career, especially considering that the client for the missions would be the Sandaime Hokage himself. Then there was the financial windfall the missions, especially the potential S-rank bonus pay, represented. It was an opportunity that could not be denied. Hokage-sama, I cannot turn down such an offer. It would be an honor to help Uzumaki Naruto overcome his recent adversities. I'm so glad you agree, Ebisu. I can't tell you what a relief it is to me to know that Naruto will be in such skilled hands. I have no doubts that you will be able to turn him into a most excellent ninja. You will find no one more determined to succeed than Naruto. Ha! This lightens my heart and my bank account, Hiruzen thought with a smile. He wants to be Hokage, you know? I could pass from this life a content soul if I lived to see Naruto take up this blasted hat. Hospitals sucked, Naruto had decided. He'd been in the hospital for various reasons over the years, but never for more than an hour or two. At least he'd only been conscious for the last few hours. Naruto seriously thought he'd go crazy if he just had to lay here for days on end, unable to leave the uncomfortable bed. His nose had never itched so bad as it did now, when the only relief he could get was to ask someone to scratch it for him. After the old man left, he'd bugged a nurse until she'd scratched it. That wasn't an option now, however, at least not until there was a shift change. One innocent little question. How come he hadn't had to pee since he woke up? And that led to talk of catheters, what they did, where they went, and how the nurse he was questioning had inserted his. Without a mirror he couldn't be sure, but Naruto figured he'd probably looked like a tomato, one about to explode from sheer embarrassment. Naruto knew that Old Man Hokage was crazy smart. You don't get nicknames like the Professor. How awesome do you have to make being called a teacher sound so badass? Or the freaking god of ninja by being stupid? This one time, though, Naruto doubted the old guy's brains. Did he really think a stupid little accident was going to stop Uzumaki Naruto from being a ninja? Not just a ninja, but the best damn ninja who ever lived? On his way to greatness, he'd make sure to stop and take the Hokage hat for himself, too, just to prove the old man wrong. First things first, though. Ninjing had to wait until he could take a piss on his own and scratch his stupid nose. Hokage-sama, sir, Ebisu said. A copy of Naruto's medical file tucked under one arm and a significantly larger one. The boys' academy records, 90% of which consisted of disciplinary reports, held in the other. If through the course of my new student's development it becomes necessary to inform him of his status as a Jinchuriki, how shall I handle the matter? Hiruzen sighed, expecting the question before it was asked. He'd already played a game of verbal cat and mouse with Naruto earlier in the day when the boy's curiosity led to the asking of many questions. It was not difficult to refocus Naruto's attention away from a path that ended with a revelation about the Kyuubi. It just left him feeling guilty and tired. I originally planned to tell Naruto when he became a Genin. Now I will leave that to your discretion, Ebisu. If you truly feel that lack of this knowledge is hindering Naruto's development, inform me and I shall be the one to reveal the truth to him. He deserves to hear it from me since I'm the one responsible for his ignorance. Ebisu nodded and stood. By your leave, Hokage-sama. I would like to meet my new student now. You're dismissed. Naruto had just finished counting the ceiling tiles for the 32nd time, and was about to move on to trying to make the paralysis seal stuck to his forehead burst into flame with only the power of his mind when two short, sharp knocks on his door interrupted his misery. That was kinda odd. He couldn't imagine who would bother to knock. The doctors and nurses sure didn't care about his privacy if the use of catheters was a standard practice around here, and the old man would know better than to think we would need to knock. Maybe Tucci and Ayam Ichiraku had learned he was sick and were coming to visit? Come in. The man who entered the room was a stranger to Naruto. Tall and wiry, wearing a Jounin flak jacket and dark sunglasses, he didn't look very intimidating. Ninja didn't have to look scary to be awesome, though, so Naruto cut him some slack there. Naruto couldn't help but recognize that well-worn red folder the stranger carried. He'd seen it often enough when a teacher wrote him up for some joke or other. Please, gods, don't let this man be the bringer of homework, Naruto thought despondently. The stranger cleared his throat with a cough before speaking. Hello, Uzumaki Naruto. My name is Kanugi Ebisu, and I am a special Jounin instructor. I have been selected by Hokage-sama to be your personal tutor in the ninja arts. Holy shit, the old man had given him his very own Jounin tutor. First things first. Hi, will you scratch my nose? For the duration of our association, Naruto, you are to refer to me as either master or sensei. Sure thing, sensei. Really, it was the least Naruto could do. Ebisu had scratched his nose. So, when are we gonna get started? I'm so bored. Hey sensei, why don't you go get the old man so he can take this seal off? I know he said it was for my own good, but I'm going crazy here. I really want to prove to him that I can still be a ninja and I can't do that stuck in this bed all day. Naruto would have reiterated his point a while longer had he not run out of breath. The Jounin instructor's brow twitched at hearing the Sandaime Hokage referred to as the old man. Before his charge could regain his verbal momentum, Ebisu said, Calm yourself, Naruto. There is no need to involve Hokage-sama. If you promise not to move a muscle until I say otherwise, I will remove the paralysis seal now. Really? Awesome. You must be a pretty hotshot ninja if you can undo something the old man made. I promise not to move. Naruto really hoped Sensei gave him permission to move in like a minute or two, 'cause otherwise he might end up breaking that promise. Totally by accident, of course. Anyone with even a rudimentary knowledge of sealing techniques could disable this seal, Naruto, as you will no doubt learn under my tutelage. Ebisu touched a single finger to the seal adhered to Naruto's forehead, channeled a small surge of chakra through it, and commanded, Release! The small square of paper peeled away easily, and though Naruto kept his word and did not move, his body relaxed noticeably. Naruto watched as Sensei closely examined the old man's seal before neatly folding it and tucking it into a pocket in his vest. As expected of the professor, his seal work is impeccable. Thought Naruto, the old man's a beast. Now then, Naruto, I want you to use your dominant hand. That's the hand you use to write and throw weapons most proficiently with, to very slowly reach for your nose. Keep in mind that excessive haste on your part could lead to a crippling injury that not even the legendary medic ninja Princess Tsunade could correct. Right, Sensei? No pressure there at all. Slowly. Even more slowly than the time he slipped a live frog into Ino's kunai pouch without her noticing. Naruto brought his arm from beneath the thin sheet. When he finally got the arm uncovered almost 3 seconds later, the young ninja-to-be realized that he couldn't move his arm faster even if he wanted to. He would have squawked in wide-eyed terror at this unpleasant revelation if not for the sight of his arm. What the hell? Maybe he should have paid a bit more attention when the old man was explaining his new condition, instead of just nodding along whenever a word he'd never heard of was used. So, partial exoskeleton meant that he had built-in body armor now to go along with his metal bones? That's awesome. I'm gonna be the toughest ninja ever. Ebisu remained silent as his student surveyed his modified state. Reading the medical report or being briefed by Hokage-sama did not do justice to the alteration Naruto had undergone. The blue-tinged silver of chakra conductive iron sheathed almost the entirety of the boy's forearm, and even as Ebisu watched on, the metal slowly flexed and deformed like a second skin as Naruto ever so slowly turned it this way and that to get a better view. It was obvious to the Jounin that an outside intelligence had been at work when the metal was being fused, or merely overlaid onto Naruto's flesh. The iron was too uniform in thickness, smooth and evenly distributed, stopping just short of enveloping the boy's wrist or impairing movement of his elbow. Naruto spent another minute admiring his awesome built-in armor before continuing on with his assigned task. He eventually reached his nose. It was glorious. He'd never again be beholden to another to satisfy the primal urge to scratch. Sensei, am I going to rust? Keeping his kunai and shuriken clean and oiled was kind of a pain in the butt, and he wasn't too thrilled about having to take a shower every day. Either. If he had to bathe and oil himself, that was gonna suck. Ebisu smirked slightly, and it was the first time Naruto had seen anything resembling a sense of humor from the man. I find the possibility highly unlikely, Naruto. Chakra conductive iron. the metal that you have so thoroughly been bonded with, has many special properties. Among them is resilience bordering on indestructibility, so long as an adequate supply of chakra flows through the metal. With my own senses to confirm the medical ninjas and Hokage-sama's observations, there is certainly more than a merely adequate amount of chakra flowing through the iron. Phew, that's a relief. You're really smart, sensei. His sensei nodded, silently accepting the compliment. You did not seem to encounter any difficulty just now, Naruto. Did you experience any pain or discomfort while moving your arm? Nope, it felt totally fine. Wasn't even sore from being paralyzed for so long, Naruto answered. It was really hard to move, though. Not like I was trying to lift something heavy. Just kinda dash. He paused, searching for a way to explain. There was resistance? Yeah, that's it. There was resistance when I tried to move my arm. Actually, now that I think about it, I'm still feeling resistance when I move my head and talk. It's just not as bad. I thought that was the old man's seal, but I guess not. Once more, Naruto, please use your arm to touch your nose. This time, I want you to do so just slightly quicker than before. Stop immediately if you feel any pain whatsoever, Sensei commanded. Naruto would have complied, but he had already discovered that he could not move his arm faster. Sensei, I can't. It won't move any faster. Is this what the old man meant when he said I might not be able to be a ninja? Naruto wondered. His awesome new armor and bones wouldn't do him a lot of good if he was slower than a turtle. This was not the worst-case scenario Ebisu and Hokage-sama had envisioned. That would have been torn flesh and a permanently crippled chakra network. It also was not the best possible outcome, with Naruto simply having to deal with the greatly increased weight of his iron-infused body. Acting on a hunch, Ebisu spoke. Naruto, I understand from your school records that your chakra control is quite poor. You do, however, know how to perform the leaf exercise. Correct. Yeah, I got that. Except the times the leaf burst into flames. Or the one time it became a projectile and embedded itself in the chalkboard, narrowly avoiding Irika's head. There had also been that one time where it got stuck to his forehead for 2 days. None of those incidents had happened since last year, though, so Naruto felt pretty confident he could pull off whatever Sensei was about to ask him to do. I want you to deliberately channel chakra to your arm when I say so. Use the absolute smallest amount that you are capable of isolating. Do it just like you are trying to stick a leaf to your palm, Naruto, but allow the chakra to diffuse throughout your arm. Are you ready? At Naruto's hesitant nod, he continued, Begin. Brow furrowed in concentration. Naruto lay still for several seconds, simultaneously calling on his chakra and attempting to limit what came forth. It was very hard for him to do. Sensei was right about his chakra control. Observing intently, Ebisu did not miss when the iron sheathing Naruto's forearm lost its silvery blue luster and became an unremarkable light gray. He also could not help but sense the quite large amount of chakra the boy had just dumped into his arm. If that was the minimum he could grasp with plenty of prep time, they really had their work cut out for them. If his hunch proved correct, chakra control would be of the utmost importance for Naruto. Naruto felt the change in his arm and to some extent the rest of his body. He wasn't very good at just sending chakra to any one area to begin with, and in his excitement did not wait for Sensei's permission to move. With no effort at all, just like it was supposed to work, Naruto was able to flex his arm, elbow, wrist, and hand unimpeded. Sensei, I hope you aren't allergic to ramen, because I owe you a bowl or 3. Ebisu was expecting some improved mobility, but nothing as dramatic as a complete return of function so quickly. I will take you up on your offer soon enough, Naruto. Continue experimenting with imbuing chakra into your right arm, and only your right arm while I sign you out of the hospital and into my care. Face still red with embarrassment, Naruto grumbled unintelligibly to himself as Ebisu rolled him out of the hospital in a wheelchair. Would it have been too much to ask for someone to knock him out before sending the nurse back in to remove his catheter? At least he'd been able to admire his new armored form after the nurse left. The old man had not been kidding. Most of the surface of his arms, legs, chest and abdomen, and even his back were covered in a smooth layer of super rare iron. It was really heavy, too. He probably weighed a lot more than Chuji now, but he didn't feel any different as long as he kept a steady background hum of chakra flowing through his body. It wasn't hard to do. While his control was crap, no one could ever claim that Uzumaki Naruto didn't have chakra to spare. Hey, where are we going, sensei? My apartment is back the other way, Naruto commented when his mortification receded enough for him to pay attention to his surroundings. You will no longer be living in your apartment, Naruto. I have made arrangements, with Hokage-sama's approval, to temporarily change your place of residence to my home. This will allow for maximum time spent training. Additionally, your new condition has never been encountered before, and there is any number of potential medical complications that could arise. Naruto gulped at that announcement. Though I am not a medic ninja, my first aid training is comprehensive, and I have been briefed on many symptoms to look out for in case your health begins to deteriorate. If you do not wish to share a home with me, however, other arrangements can be made. I believe the medic in charge of your case felt that long-term observation in the hospital was the best course of action. Naruto felt he was justified in panicking just a little at the thought of having to live in the hospital. No, sensei. I'd love to live with you. Can we at least stop by my apartment to get my stuff? Once you are settled in, I will visit your apartment and retrieve any items you need. Hokage-sama has indicated that the apartment will remain in your possession, so that you will have a place to return to once you become a genin. That was pretty cool of the old man. Does your place have windows? My plants will die without lots of sunlight. Unseen by Naruto, Ebisu rolled his eyes. I assure you, Naruto, I do not live in a cave. Hiruzen studied the ancient, debris-strewn bunker Naruto had stumbled across so very explosively. Bunker was not the most fitting description for the space. It certainly did not appear to have been constructed to withstand the forces he would have had in mind when envisioning a bunker and no entrance or exit beyond the hole blown in the ceiling had been discovered. Perhaps it had been the basement laboratory of some long-ago demolished surface dwelling? Approximately 10 meters in diameter, the circular subterranean room was decorated with what had to be the largest seal array Hiruzen had ever seen. Even the most casual inspection revealed individual seals to gather, store, and focus chakra, seals to regulate chakra flow, others designed to promote expansion, and many more, all of them linked together for some greater purpose. Etched into the stone walls and floor, the array's focal terminus appeared to be the platform upon which Naruto landed. Naruto's dried blood covered much of the altar-like platform as well as the remainder of the iron spike that impaled him. Most of the iron had been eaten away by the Kyuubi's chakra and infused into the young boy, but a considerable portion remained. It was worth a fortune, but Hiruzen did not intend to sell the metal or even catalog its existence. He had an idea that it may prove most useful to Naruto one day. For now it would be hidden, kept secret to avoid tempting his more avaricious citizens. Creating a shadow clone, silently and without hand seals, was child's play for the so-called god of ninja. The chakra construct knew its purpose immediately. It accepted the large blank scroll and writing kit handed to it by Hiruzen and went to work documenting the extensive array. Once finished with this task, it would create another clone to deliver the scroll to the original, and then use the remainder of its chakra to destroy the array and fill in the room with an earth element ninjutsu technique. Leaving his duplicate to its work, Hiruzen turned his attention back to the altar. A single sharp blow from a chakra-infused fist shattered the platform. As broken stone fell away, much of it reduced to pea-sized gravel by the force of the Hokage's strike, Hiruzen discovered the iron was not merely fastened to the uppermost portion of the altar as he assumed. Instead, from the wide base that rested atop the altar, a double finger-width rod plunged down into the earth below. When the clone cleared the rubble away, he suspected it would find that seals were being engraved up to the very edge where the iron rod pierced the floor. Hardly displeased to discover there was even more of the rare metal, Hiruzen wrenched it free from the ground and tested its weight in his age-spotted hand. This was far more than Hiruzen expected to find. More than he could in good conscience gift to Naruto. Chakra-conductive iron was precious for a damned good reason. Even a small amount forged into what would otherwise be an ordinary weapon produced a tool that was many times more deadly when wielded in the hands of a competent ninja. His son's dual trench knives were a prime example of just how effective a bit of this iron could be. It took but a moment to seal the treasure away in a previously prepared storage scroll. He would divvy up portions for Naruto and what he intended to donate to the ninjas of Konoha later. Hiruzen leapt through the hole in the ceiling and addressed the pair of Ebisu standing guard over the site. Make sure my shadow clone is not disturbed. When its task is finished, it will take care of removing the chamber as a hazard. With that, the Sandaime Hokage body flickered away. How come I can't walk on my own, sensei? Naruto asked with some irritation. It was embarrassing to be seen by the whole village as he was wheeled through the village like some kind of crippled old dude. Not just embarrassing either. In the past several minutes, Naruto noticed people glancing at him, only to quickly lose interest and go about their business. Not a single villager had bothered to glare hatefully in his direction. It was weird. It would be the height of folly to act as if a few minutes of experimentation completely alleviated all of your mobility issues, Naruto. Due to the iron in your body, your weight has nearly tripled since you last walked without assistance. This is sure to wreak havoc with your balance. I doubt you want to fall flat on your face a dozen times or more covering the short distance to my home. Well, when you put it that way, Sensei kinda made sense. There is also the small matter that the only clothing you are wearing is a backless hospital gown, Sensei added helpfully. With a yelp, Naruto made sure he was situated in the wheelchair so he didn't accidentally give any of the pervs in Konoha a free show. It was probably that nurse's doing. She was out to get him. Naruto's absence from the streets of Konoha for the past 3 days had not really settled into the general awareness of the village. Some individuals who were accustomed to the sight of the young Jinchuriki might have taken notice, or maybe not. It was only 3 days after all. There were a few, though, who were becoming genuinely concerned by the boy's disappearance. The proprietor of a small ramen shop and his daughter were already debating whether or not they should petition for an audience before the Hokage today or give Naruto another day or 2 to return. One small girl, timid in a way none would expect a Hyuga to be, was a nervous, stuttering wreck. Hinata knew all of Naruto's favorite hangouts and even the places he only visited rarely. She checked each and every one of them over the past 2 days. Then she checked again. Sleep had mostly eluded the young heiress these past 2 nights and the effects were hard to miss. Yumino Irika had been briefed on Naruto's condition, of course. He'd also heard quite a few disturbing rumors to go along with the official story of Naruto's accident. Irika intended to visit his student when he received word that the boy was conscious. He'd probably appreciate a bowl of takeout ramen from Ichiraku's. The thought brought a short-lived smile to the scarred instructor's face. It was wiped away when he once again noticed the unhealthy pallor and nervousness of Hyuga Hinata. She was a little young for it, but Irika had noticed she seemed to harbor a pretty fierce schoolgirl crush on Naruto. It was both sad and amusing. Irika often wished Naruto would return the girl's affections, or at least notice her. Anything would be better than his reckless attempts to garner attention from Haruno Sakura. The pink-haired girl did not shy from committing great violence to her unwanted admirer. Children these days. They were just getting weirder and weirder. Class, I'm sure most of you have noticed we are missing a student, Irika announced. He had waited to share this news, hoping against hope that word would come down of Naruto's full recovery. Since he'd been handed the boy's withdrawal forms only minutes before stepping into his first class of the day, Irika saw no reason to delay the inevitable. It might also spare Hinata a premature nervous breakdown. Hinata focused her attention onto the sensei with razor-sharp eyes, unconsciously activating her Byakugan without the slightest effort. She might have even been proud of herself if she'd bothered to take notice of the accomplishment. Instead, she devoted her full being to observing Irika's nonverbal cues. It was something of a Hyuga specialty, the ability to discern emotions, truthfulness, and a host of other subtle aspects of a person via those all-seeing eyes. The sensei was sad and full of regret, uncomfortable giving this news, and there was the barest hint of moisture gathering at the corners of his eyes. No. 3 days ago, Uzumaki Naruto was involved in a severe accident. Due to the nature and extent of his injuries, he has been removed from the academy roster as ineligible for eventual ninja duties. If anyone wishes to send Naruto, the sensei continued speaking. Hinata saw. The pounding of blood in her ears made it impossible for her to understand him. Though, the classroom was growing warm and her head was spinning and... Thump! Irika hurried to Hinata's side. The poor girl had not taken the news well at all. She'd slipped from her seat and landed poorly, cracking her head on something hard enough to split her scalp. Hopefully she had not concussed herself. Head wounds always bled a lot. He gathered the unconscious girl into his arms and spoke. I will be back in a few minutes. There will be hell to pay if anyone gets up to mischief while I'm gone. With that parting threat, he left for the nurse's office. Head aching from the dispersion of 2 shadow clones in such a short time period and the double flood of nearly identical information they injected into his mind, Hiruzen reluctantly unrolled the scroll delivered by his duplicate. While the clones directly passed on a great deal of the scroll's contents, there was too much to remember it all in detail. Without needing to consult the scroll, Hiruzen was already certain he'd divined one key fact from his clone's memories. The seal array he'd just destroyed was of Uzumaki make and design. Beyond a few telltale seals he'd never seen used outside of that once famous clan, there were many small signs, a peculiarly twisted shunt here, a doubled-up buffer there, and other clues all reminiscent an Uzumaki seal specialist. Jiraiya might just wet himself in glee when Hiruzen showed this scroll to his old student. Now if only a messenger toad would arrive so that he could pass word of the latest happenings to his wandering student. Sensei did not live in an apartment like Naruto imagined. It was actually a decent-sized house with a large walled-in area out back the Jounin led him to. They were well into the predominantly ninja-populated district of the village. That was good. Not a whole lot of ninjas seemed to like Naruto, but very few ever went out of their way to be mean to him, and that was nice. Cool place, Sensei. You live here all by yourself. The pinnacle of tact Naruto was not. That is correct, Naruto. Though it will also be your home for the foreseeable future. Ebisu locked the wheelchair's brake in place to prevent Naruto from rolling away. Wait one moment while I disable the security array. Naruto watched curiously as his sensei walked up to a dull metal plate the size of a small book that was embedded in the brick wall of the home right next to the door. Even if he couldn't see which hand seal the man made with his back turned to Naruto, the effect when he placed it against the plate palm first was hard to miss. It flashed blue then black and Naruto saw what looked like tiny symbols appear on the plate between color changes. Then it was over and the place was back to normal. The front door clicked open without further effort. As Ebisu returned to his position at the back of the wheelchair, Naruto asked, "What was that, Sensei?" As any ninja with a working knowledge of the sealing arts should, I have taken the precaution of warding my property from intrusion. So people can't break in? That sounded really useful. There had been a few incidents where he'd come home to find his apartment ransacked. It was a really shitty way to end the day. No security is guaranteed to be 100% effective, Naruto. Ebisu was wheeling Naruto inside as he spoke. The best we can settle for without an excessive use of time and resources is to make a target not worth the effort involved in penetrating its defenses. Naruto didn't quite understand, though he got the gist of Sensei's explanation. Will you teach me how to make seals like that? They were past the entryway and into the home proper now. If you prove an adept enough student, I will certainly be able to provide you with at least a basic grounding in the sealing arts. Awesome. You can stand now. Do so carefully and remember to use as little chakra as possible, admonished Ebisu as he closed the door behind them. Feel free to have a look around. I will return momentarily. Careful to hold the back of his gown closed, Naruto gratefully left the wheelchair behind and was pleased to see Sensei taking it away. If he was lucky, he'd never see it again. While waiting for Sensei to return, he looked around to get a better idea of where he'd be staying. The house was not constructed or furnished in what Naruto had heard called the traditional style. It sure was nice and a lot better than his run-down old apartment. There was little decoration beyond simple high-quality furniture and deep blue carpeting. His sensei returned without the wheelchair and quickly laid down the rules of the house. Don't make a mess, clean up after yourself, or else if you break it you buy it, and so on. The room he led Naruto was kinda bare, but the bed looked comfortable and there was a large window with a shelf that would be perfect for his plants. From Sensei's demeanor, he had a feeling the desk tucked over in the corner would be seeing a lot of use too. Now would be a good time to start getting acquainted with moving normally while channeling chakra to your limbs, Naruto. I must report to Hokage-sama. If you're going to see the old man, could you get my spare apartment key from him? I dunno what happened to my old one. It'd be great if you could stop by and get me some of my clothes, so I don't have to walk around holding this stupid thing closed. Can you bring my plants, too? They've got to be thirsty by now. I hope they're all right. The Jounin nodded and disappeared with a body flicker. Man, that technique was so cool. Naruto slowly walked around his new room, trying to get a feel for his new weight like Sensei said. He didn't really feel all that different. Experimentally, he tried a high kick, making sure he wasn't close enough to break anything if he messed up. Naruto didn't think he could afford to buy any of Sensei's stuff if he broke it. The kick didn't so much fail as succeed far too well. It went higher than he was expecting and much faster than he'd managed before. The end result was that he was thrown totally off balance, almost kicked himself in the face, and fell flat on his ass with a weighty thump. I am so glad no one was around to see that, Naruto thought with a grin. Sensei was right on the money about his balance issues, though. Ebisu. I trust that Naruto has behaved himself? Hiruzen asked with an amused glint in his dark eyes. He's an excitable boy, Hokage-sama, but his behavior thus far has been acceptable. I believe that he will benefit greatly from one-on-one tutoring. I've seen his type of attention-seeking behavior before and will likely see it again. A firm hand and a constant presence will go a long way towards tempering his negative impulses, like excessive practical joking, vandalism of important government buildings, and explosively revealing forgotten chambers filled to the brim with all sorts of interesting materials. Ebisu was an experienced educator, no doubt about it, with several years as a Chunin instructor at the academy before moving on to his current role as a government-sanctioned tutor for hire. He seemed to have a pretty good read on Naruto and had no doubt studied the boy's extensive academy file. Despite that, Hiruzen had a feeling that the man standing before him didn't quite know what he was in for if he expected Naruto to just fall in line. That is great to hear, Ebisu. Now please tell me what you've discovered of Naruto's condition. I've already received a message from the hospital protesting the early withdrawal of your new student from their observation. If Naruto had any illusions of being able to slack off under Ebisu's tutelage, they were shattered the very first morning he awoke in his new bedroom. Sensei was a morning person. A very early in the morning, up before the sun rose kind of morning person, and he insisted on Naruto doing so as well, the bastard. Groggy-eyed and unashamedly wearing his toad sleeping cap, the boy stood in Ebisu's backyard under the gray pre-dawn sky, trying to glare balefully at his sensei. Blinking and rubbing his eyes kept ruining the effect, though. Now, Naruto, carefully step into the circle inked on the scroll and do not move until I say otherwise. This should take no more than a minute, then we can begin your lessons for the day. Before sending Naruto off to bed the night before, Ebisu explained how every week the boy would be required to undergo a preventative reading via diagnostic seal array. It would record all of his vital statistics and other odds and ends that wouldn't normally be of concern for most people, like iron content in his blood and rate of production of new blood cells. So long as he remained healthy, Naruto need not fear returning to the hospital for a more long-term stay. Standing barefoot on the indicated area of the scroll, Naruto perked up a bit as Sensei activated it. Though he had not the slightest clue what any of the little black squiggles meant, it was neat how they turned green and started glowing. Kinda tingled, too. Less than a minute passed before the green faded back to mundane black and Sensei allowed him to step off. For the next hour, Naruto, I will observe as you work your way through all of the standard academy taijutsu katas you have learned up to this point. This will serve as additional mobility practice for you and will allow me to begin gauging your approximate hand-to-hand proficiency. Afterward, we will take a short break for breakfast. Can we have ramen, Sensei? Please. Dinner the night before had been tasty, but it was not even a rough patch on a good bowl of ramen, and he'd been deprived for days now. Despite the low light at such an early hour, Ebisu still wore his dark sunglasses. This was good, because he would have been more than a little peeved to let his student see him lose his composure over such an inane question. Ramen for breakfast, Naruto? I think not. He was beginning to get an idea that few of the boys' meals were anything but ramen from the incessant chattering the night before. Now more than ever, we must assure that you eat a proper balanced diet. You are an incredibly resilient young man, Naruto, gifted with a remarkable ability to recover from damage that would kill another man. We do not currently understand how much stress is being placed on your unique recuperative abilities, simply maintaining your general well-being. No sense in sharing with the boy their concerns that the bulk of the Kyuubi's ability to regenerate his injuries was compromised maintaining his iron-infused form. To Naruto, Sensei's long-winded answer sounded disturbingly like a build-up to saying he could never eat ramen again. No, Ebisu continued. Ensuring you have all the necessary vitamins and minerals can only help your development, and may very well keep you out of the hospital. You do wish to grow tall and strong, correct, Naruto? Naruto only responded with a quietly mumbled, "No ramen. If you perform well and do not complain about your assignments, Naruto, I will consider letting you have ramen for lunch today." Ebisu relented with a sigh, noticing how despondent the boy had become in such a short time. Naruto was awfully young to already be picking up the obsessive weirdness often attributed to older ninja. At least Naruto did not appear unduly slowed by his additional weight, Ebisu noted, as the boy plowed into him with a running tackle hug. He had to use chakra to anchor himself to the flagstones of the courtyard, to avoid being knocked over by Naruto's considerable momentum. Well, at least he knew one very good way to motivate Naruto now. Chakra control exercises? Naruto asked, taking care not to sound like he was complaining. That was the way to lose ramen privileges. Indeed, Naruto. When not covering course material from the academy curriculum, the majority of our time in the coming months will be spent improving your chakra control. How come? No whining here. Nope. Chakra control is the foundation of all the greater ninja arts. Naruto. Ebisu decided to take this opportunity to really drive home how essential this aspect of Naruto's training chakra control would become. At your current level of control, you could not even cast the most basic of genjutsu on a heavily sedated target. Your E-rank transformation technique, while functional, reportedly uses as much as 50 times more chakra that should be necessary. If you attempted to prime something so simple as a freshly inked storage scroll right now, it could end up blowing up in your face or fatally absorbing you into the seal. And let's not forget that your ability to move about freely is entirely dependent on channeling chakra to your limbs. Naruto. The less chakra you need to use to move about, the more you will eventually have available for other uses. Ah. Naruto scratched the back of his head with a grin. Chakra control exercises sound pretty good. I thought you would say so. Ebisu drew a small square of blank paper from one of the small pockets of his jounin vest and handed it to Naruto. This is a special type of paper made from trees infused with chakra throughout their growing cycle. It will respond in specific ways depending on the elemental chakra affinity of whoever uses it. Oh, I remember this. My chakra affinity decides what kind of ninjutsu I'll be able to use best, right? And Irika thought he never paid attention. Ha! Yes, Naruto, while you are correct, Sensei answered with a nod. It is much too early in your training to begin working with elemental chakra. You must run before you can fly. There are, however, many chakra control exercises best suited to the various chakra affinities. Just channel a bit of chakra into the paper, and we will use the results to tailor a set of exercises that should come most easily to you. Naruto regarded the slip of paper doubtfully. Last time he added chakra to paper things had not gone so well. Sensei didn't seem worried, though. Well, here goes nothing. Ebisu was just as surprised as Naruto when the chakra paper flashed blue with Naruto's telltale excess chakra, then stiffened in his grip and took on the silvery blue sheen of the chakra conductive iron sheathing so much of his form. Startled, Naruto dropped the paper-turned oddly shaped blade. It landed corner first and slid easily, without seeming to meet much in the way of resistance, 3 or 4 centimeters into one of the courtyard's flagstones. Sensei and students stared at the deeply embedded object in silence, one waiting for it to explode and the other wondering if chakra paper was supposed to do that. A few seconds passed, and without warning the altered chakra paper lost its metallic appearance and returned to normal, albeit still buried halfway through solid rock. This is an unexpected development, Naruto, Ebisu finally commented. He removed several pieces of chakra paper from his vest pocket and gave another to Naruto. I did not think to time the length of the paper's transformation. Try to use the same amount of chakra as last time. Several minutes of experimentation revealed that Naruto did not appear to have a classical elemental chakra affinity. The more chakra be imbued into the paper, the longer it remained transformed, and while altered, the paper-turned iron could cut any substance from stone to hardened steel with equal ease. Range did not appear to be a significant factor. At least once the paper was imbued, it remained in iron form for the entire duration, regardless of whether Naruto was holding it or if it was on the other side of the courtyard stuck in the wall separating the property from Konoha proper. The transformation also worked on regular paper, a leaf, a wooden chopstick, and one of Ebisu's old bandanas, though more chakra was required and the duration was shorter from one material to the next. Though this discovery threw Ebisu's lesson plans off, it also opened up a new avenue of approach both for training and Naruto's eventual ninja career. His students' unusual ability was totally unheard of, as far as he knew. They would have to work together closely to learn the limits of its potential and to ensure that Naruto developed that potential to its fullest. Naruto, you should be pleased to learn that you could possess an ability as unique as the Shodaime Hokage's famous would-release techniques, Ebisu said, aware of how well such praise would be received by the attention-starved boy. Oh yeah, Naruto cheered. I'm awesome. Metal bones, kick-ass body armor, and now he could turn stuff into metal, too? Look out, world. Uzumaki freaking Naruto has arrived. Until I can devise a set of exercises to properly develop this aspect of your abilities, we will adhere to the more traditional methods of improving chakra control. Hokage-sama has been kind enough to reserve a small neglected training ground for your exclusive use. Come, it is time to learn to climb trees. Naruto cast a confused look at his sensei. Climbing trees? Really? He'd been doing that since he was a little kid. Okay. Naruto silently conceded some time later as he followed along beside Sensei. That wasn't the kind of tree climbing I expected. Hours of abysmal failure would have discouraged the boy, but Sensei was clear that he didn't expect him to master the ability to walk on trees and other vertical surfaces using only chakra expelled from his feet for days or even weeks. His chakra control was just that bad. It also did not hurt that they were currently on their way to Ichiraku's for ramen. Sensei, today the ramen is on me, Naruto exclaimed. He'd promised, after all, and since his toad wallet had been retrieved from his apartment along with the rest of his belonging, he figured it'd be best to make good on his offer before forgetting about it. Thank you, Naruto. Ebisu appreciated the offer and would not throw Naruto's kindness back in his face, but it would be the last time he allowed the boy to pay for a meal while under his care. The long-term mission pay he was receiving from Hokage-sama as Naruto's tutor and virtual caretaker was lavish. It would not be appropriate to squander Naruto's meager savings. Actually, giving his student a small allowance, perhaps based on his performance, would be a good idea. This is the place, Naruto announced a few minutes later. Ichiraku's, they make the best ramen in the world. If anyone ever accused Naruto of squealing in girlish delight that day as he hopped up onto one of the stools of the small ramen vendor, they would not be wrong. Of course, they would also have to act very quickly to avoid getting punched in the face. "Naruto, you're alive!" exclaimed the teenage girl behind the counter. With speed that would be respectable for a fairly experienced genin, she reached across the counter and gathered Naruto up in a quick, releasing him a moment later with a kiss to the cheek. Naruto blushed fiercely and wiped his cheek, but could not hide the grin Iam's enthusiastic greeting inspired. "Father," she called toward the back of the restaurant. "Naruto's here." Naruto was subject to another greeting only moments later, though this one was much more manly and less embarrassing for a 10-year-old boy. "I was this close?" Tucci held up his thumb and index finger with a fraction of a centimeter between them. "To going to see the Hokage to find out where you were." "Ah, Tucci, I'm sorry you guys were worried. I just had a little accident and had to stay in the hospital for a few days. Check it out. I've got my own sensei now who's going to show me how to be a kick-ass ninja." Naruto's introductions left something to be desired. Ebisu nodded in greeting to the man and his daughter, pleased to see that Naruto had found a couple friends amongst the populace of Konoha. "Kanugi Ebisu, pleased to meet you both. Naruto tells me that you serve excellent ramen." Unable to contain himself any longer, Naruto erupted. "I'm starving for ramen. I'll have a miso ramen to start with, no make it too. Then a pork ramen." Hyuga Hinata was being escorted to the ninja academy by a branch member of her clan after finally being given a clean bill of health. Her fainting spell and subsequent bloody head wound the day before having earned her a great deal of unwanted scrutiny by various family members. Though the girl was not eager to return to the academy, she was even less inclined to spend any more time in the clan compound than necessary. When her preternaturally sharp eyes caught sight of an unusual amount of orange crossing the street 2 intersections over, the normally timid girl would not be denied, despite the protests of her escort. The Ikugen activated. She quickly found her target and followed along at a discreet distance. Unmistakably Naruto, she'd viewed him through her special eyes any times. The boy was also very different than she'd ever seen before. His chakra coils positively gleamed and he had chakra-infused metal all over his body. In it, too. What could have possibly happened to cause this oddity? When she eventually gathered her courage to so casually walk by Naruto's favorite ramen stand, her timing was such that she heard, "I'm sorry you guys were worried. I just had a little accident and had to stay in the hospital for a few days. Check it out. I've got my own sensei now who's going to show me how to be a kick-ass ninja." And all was right with the world. "I wonder if it is a refinement of a previously existing earth chakra affinity," Hiruzen said. He was familiar with the affinities of Naruto's parents and knew that the child of a wind-natured and water-natured parent would almost never be earth-natured. That was classified information that Ebisu did not need to know, however. A pity we don't know what Naruto's affinity was before the accident. "I have heard speculation that the Shodame's would release techniques were the result of his bloodline's unique ability to blend earth and water chakras," Ebisu responded. "I cannot imagine what combination of elements would be needed to produce the results demonstrated by my student. Naruto's ability to transform other objects into iron may not be related to elemental recomposition at all, even if an application of earth-natured chakra would be a logical explanation. Maybe some sort of very fine instinctive shape manipulation." Hiruzen shook his head and sighed. "This is all useless speculation, I'm afraid. We simply have too little data to start making such assumptions, Ebisu." "I can't help but agree, Hokage-sama. It is a most interesting mystery to contemplate, though." With regards to Naruto's condition and continuing education, Hiruzen had a feeling he would be having many meetings like this one in the years to come. It might be better if he just blocked in a regular time in his weekly schedule to avoid interfering with his other obligations. "Would you mind if I paid a visit during one of Naruto's training sessions, sometime soon to witness the results of his new ability?" "Of course not, Hokage-sama," Ebisu responded forcefully. "It would be an honor, and I'm sure my student would appreciate a visit from you. In the meantime, I have something that may serve as a training aid during Naruto's chakra control exercises." From his desk, Hiruzen retrieved a portion of the chakra-conductive iron rod he'd discovered the day before in the chamber where Naruto was injured. He'd trimmed the 2-meter-long rod down into more easily handled sections of 20 centimeters each. "Ah, is that Ebisu found that he was unable to address the Hokage properly, so settled for shutting up lest he embarrass himself. A large amount of chakra conductive iron, identical to that infused into Naruto? Hiruzen grinned at the normally unflappable Jounin's minor stumble. Yes, it is. In light of Naruto's apparently overwhelming affinity for this metal, it may be prudent to introduce him to it earlier than I originally intended. There is an advanced chakra control exercise first devised by my former student Tsunade that some medical ninja now use to build both control and endurance. Are you familiar with senbon or wire bending? No, Hokage-sama. I don't believe I have heard of that particular method. It's simple in theory, but complex in practice. The goal is to become adept at manipulating a senbon or a piece of thick wire through chakra alone, to accomplish such feats as forming loops, twists, and knots. Though it is early in Naruto's training for such an advanced exercise, I have a feeling that it may work very well for the boy. If he masters the exercise as I expect, this could be a powerful tool in Naruto's hands. Hiruzen concluded as he sealed the rod away into a scroll and passed it to the Jounin. I bet this would be a lot easier if I didn't weigh a freaking ton? An annoyed Naruto muttered quietly as he once more hauled himself out of the small pond occupying the back corner of Sensei's property. The Jounin created it specifically for training Naruto in water walking, first with a minor earth element technique to create the hole, a fire element technique to harden the walls and prevent drainage, then a water element technique to fill it in. The short display of ninjutsu had the boy eagerly begging to learn such awesome techniques. Sensei responded with the phrase Naruto was really getting tired of. You must run before you can fly. Grr. Naruto wanted to get some fish to keep in the pond, but figured he'd better complete the training first. No need to traumatize the poor creatures with his repeated splashing. Sensei agreed and promised to let him pick out the fish and plants to occupy the pond once he learned the exercise. As with the tree climbing exercise, Naruto, your weight is not a factor in determining your success or failure. Standing upon the water is entirely dependent on your chakra supply and how well you control it. Since you obviously have an overabundance of chakra, it is only your control that is lacking. Ebisu sat cross-legged several feet from the edge of the pond, patiently observing his student's progress, or lack thereof. As Naruto struggled to walk steadily on the water, Ebisu busied himself mastering the wire-bending exercise given to him by Hokage-sama 3 weeks prior. It was simple to practice, did not require elaborate props or specific locations, and since the Jounin began working on it, he had detected a very slight but noticeable increase in his chakra reserves. It had even given Ebisu an idea for a new technique he'd started tinkering with in his spare time. Unfortunately, the exercise was of only marginal effectiveness when applied to Naruto's own efforts to improve his control. Sensei and student discovered early on that Naruto's chakra now flowed easily into metal of all varieties. No progress was made when he could imbue a senbon or length of wire with chakra and manipulate it to his will without the slightest effort. Now it was merely a supplementary exercise Ebisu had the boy practice while doing his assigned reading each evening. At this point Naruto could unwind a spool of razor-sharp ninja wire in a second and make it dance to his whims. Ebisu had not mentioned the implications, and he was almost certain his young student had not quite caught on to just how effective this particular skill could be in combat. There would be plenty of time for that later. Watching once more as his student wobbled out onto the water's surface, Ebisu knew from almost a week's prior experience that Naruto would lose his concentration and fall through the surface right about now. Splash. Sigh. You've shown steady if minute progress today, Naruto. We'll give it another hour before moving on to practicing your weapon forms for the remainder of the afternoon. Ebisu was hardly a kenjutsu master, but like any good well-rounded ninja, he had more than a passing familiarity with the use of swords and a variety of other lethal and non-lethal weaponry. If Naruto ever wished to specialize in the use of weapons, he would need to seek outside assistance, something Ebisu planned on recommending to the boy when he reached Genin rank. There was just too much potential inherent in his ability to imbue and manipulate metal not to exploit it further. I really thought this would be harder than water walking, Naruto commented cheerfully. He was not accustomed to things coming so easily to him. Ebisu could not help but agree with his student. Earth passage was not a simple chakra exercise by any means. Most ninja never bothered to learn the skill, especially when there was an earth element technique that mostly mimicked the results with a much less difficult learning curve. He watched once more as Naruto slipped beneath the surface of the earth. If Ebisu had not seen it with his own eyes, he would have been unable to discern the point where the boy submerged, so little grass had been disturbed. Several seconds passed before Naruto returned to the surface, no dirt or debris clinging to him. Earth passage is definitely my favorite control exercise so far, Naruto jogged a few steps and leapt into the air before reorienting himself in a classic diving position. He darted beneath the surface much faster this time and was under much longer. Given that Naruto spent the better part of 2 weeks mastering water walking, Ebisu expected this latest exercise to require at least as long. Even taking his students' improving control into consideration, 3 hours was just ridiculous. It would, however, make some sense if Naruto was earth element aligned, which he wasn't. Naruto's return to the surface was much slower and more awkward than his dive. He rose to a standing position, holding his head and scowling. "I ran into a rock or something down there, sensei." "My apologies, Naruto," Ebisu said. "I should have explained the intricacies and dangers of using Earth Passage sooner. You learned this skill much more quickly than I expected." Despite his aching head, Naruto grinned and shouted, "Yeah, I'm awesome." Ebisu gestured in the manner Naruto had learned to interpret as "sit down and shut up. I have words of great wisdom to impart unto you. When using Earth Passage, you must take into account the medium through which you are moving. Loose soil and sand offers very little resistance, while rock, hard-packed soils and clays, and heavily saturated areas of all sorts can be difficult or impossible to pass through. As you painfully discovered, moving at speed while unable to sense your surroundings can prove dangerous. You must also be aware of not only your depth, but the material you must pass through in order to return to the surface. Never travel to such a depth or allow yourself to become so mired in a difficult medium that you run out of air before you can return to the surface. Suffocation is a very real possibility for those who employ Earth Passage carelessly." From the look on the Naruto's face, the thought of suffocating beneath the earth was an especially gruesome one. "Though you have learned the skill in a remarkably short time, Naruto, we will spend the next few days acquainting you with passage through different subterranean environments so you will have an idea of your limits. This is also a good opportunity for you to learn how to sense your surroundings through chakra disruptions in the earth. You will not only be able to travel underground more quickly if you can detect possible hazards, you will also be forewarned if an enemy ninja attempts to use Earth Passage, or its Earth Element technique equivalent, Underground Voyage, against you." It was Naruto's day off from training and he was making the most of it. He'd slept as late as he could, which wasn't all that late considering how long he'd been waking before sunrise. Sensei did not complain when he ate 3 servings of instant ramen for breakfast. Then he went on to most of the remainder of the morning hanging out with Old Man Hokage. The old dude was impressed with his improving ability to manipulate metals and had even allowed Naruto to demonstrate using the kunai and shuriken he kept in the concealed pouch hidden within the fold of his Hokage robe, restoring each weapon to pristine condition with barely more than a tap of his finger and a flare of chakra. And now his stomach was stuffed full of glorious ramen courtesy Ichiraku's. Before the day was over, Naruto planned to stop by the ramen stand for dinner. 2. Life was good. Naruto loved all the training he received from Sensei and was really grateful for being able to live with him. It beat the hell out of living alone and trying to teach himself new ninja skills. The last 6 months kicked ass and now so did he. The other kids from his academy class wouldn't know what hit them if they saw Naruto now. That was actually why he'd ventured out into the student-only training grounds this afternoon. The area set aside for his use by the old man was practically on the other side of the village compared to the student grounds, pretty much making the likelihood of running into a former classmate while training a big fat zero. In his off days, all 2 of them a month, Naruto had yet to find any of his former classmates, even the ones he didn't like very much. Not that he spent all day looking for them, there was just too much to do and not enough daylight to do it in, but it would be cool to know how everyone was doing, especially Sakura. He'd never admit it out loud, but Naruto kinda missed his old Chunin instructor Irika. The man was a total stickler for the rules and could track Naruto down when he cut classes better than any ANBU, yet he was also the first academy sensei who went out of his way to be helpful or even just not much of an asshole. Maybe he could talk Sensei into switching around his next free day and he could go visit the academy while class was in session. Even if he didn't find any former classmates, Naruto's time wouldn't have been totally wasted. Wandering from one training ground to the next, chakra senses uncannily attuned to the presence of large concentrations of metal. He had accumulated a small arsenal of broken, discarded, or simply forgotten ninja tools. His spare kunai pouch was bulging. Tomorrow, when Sensei put him back to work, Naruto knew he could use repairing the tools as an excuse to take it easy for a little while. Preferring to traipse through the underbrush and more thickly wooded areas between training grounds instead of taking the clearly marked paths, Naruto all but stumbled onto a familiar face as he buled his way through an overgrown bush of some sort. Inuzuka Kiba stood near the far end of the clearing, haphazardly tossing kunai at a straw dummy propped up against a tree. Sensei's word from months ago suddenly played out in Naruto's head. Attempting to sneak up on a ninja, as you put it, Naruto, is oftentimes easier said than done. Chakra sensors are rare among ninja, but there are many who have trained or inherited senses far beyond normal humans. I have noticed your sense of hearing seems especially acute. That trait may save your life one day. Hatake Kakashi is said to have a nose almost as sharp as the ninja dogs he summons. He can sometimes smell an enemy before his eyes or ears detect them. Half to Naruto and half to himself, Sensei concluded. It would not be surprising to discover Kakashi shares Inuzuka ancestry, given his excellent senses and propensity for associating with canines. Thanks, Sensei, Naruto thought. Yeah, sneaking up on the boy probably wasn't a good idea. He was sweaty from his journey. He was definitely not playing in the woods like some little kid, and because of the light orange coat he wore despite the warm day. Kiba had probably smelled him before he even entered the clearing. Yo, Kiba! Naruto called out, waving his arms wildly. The boy in question turned to Naruto, initially not appearing at all surprised at his presence, but then getting a wide-eyed look of shock for some reason. He didn't smell that bad, right? Naruto. Kiba approached and they met near the middle of the clearing. Holy crap. It is you and you're not crippled. When Irika told us you got hurt so bad you couldn't be a ninja anymore, we all thought you'd gotten a leg chopped off or something. The boy was several centimeters taller than Naruto and would have outweighed him by a fair amount if not for his special circumstances. What? Crippled? Naruto gasped. I am so gonna kick Irika right in the nuts. Yeah man, Irika didn't give us any details, but you gotta get messed up pretty bad to stop being a ninja. It doesn't look like you're missing any parts though. Grinning, Naruto made an exaggerated show of checking that his arms and legs were still intact. Arf, arf. A little white blur crashed into Kiba's shin, surprising Naruto with its sudden appearance. Kiba just laughed and picked up the small puppy. Could almost fit in the palm of the larger boy's hand. Akamaru. Meet Naruto, he's a dumbass, but pretty cool otherwise. I resent that, you mangy bastard. Naruto, meet Akamaru. The coolest ninja dog in Konoha. Arf, arf. Despite the desire to punch Kiba in the nose, Naruto couldn't help but smile at the puppy's yapping. It was kind of cute. Hey, Akamaru. It's nice to meet you. Kiba used to complain all the time about not having a dog of his own. It had been damned annoying to tell the truth. You sure are a little guy. Were you the runt of the litter? Arf, grr, arf, arf. Hey, he's just a puppy. He's supposed to be small. All Inuzuka dogs start out little and grow up slow. That way they live as long as their partner. Kiba protested, keeping a firm grip on Akamaru who apparently already had a firm enough grasp of human language to know he might have just been insulted. The puppy certainly looked like he wanted to gnaw on Naruto. Ha! Naruto laughed. Just kidding around with ya, Akamaru. I think you're awesome, too. I wish I had a ninja dog. The best I could manage was convincing Sensei to let me put fish in the pond out back. The puppy calmed down immediately, clearly understanding the apology. So jealous, Naruto thought. Those stupid fish couldn't do anything cool. Sensei? Are you in a civilian school now? That's gotta suck. Kiba actually tucked Akamaru into one of the large front pockets of the coat he was wearing, the dog not seeming to mind a bit. Ha, no way, Kiba. After I healed up, I got my own ninja sensei. I even moved in with him so he could monitor my health. Gotta look out for side effects from the accident, you know? Kiba did not know, actually, and he wondered about it aloud. Some asshole sold me an explosive tag, but told me it was something else, so I kinda blew myself up. Naruto finally answered with a sheepish grin, much to Kiba's amusement. Then I fell into a big hole and landed on some old piece of metal. This was what the old man had made him promise to tell people, instead of revealing just what material he'd been impaled on. That went all the way through my guts, not noticing the very slight greenish tint that came over Kiba's complexion. Naruto continued. It's cool, though. Check it out. Naruto rolled back the sleeves of his coat to show Kiba the iron fused to the flesh of his arms. Sensei and the old man both preferred that he cover up the more obvious armor while in public to avoid drawing a lot of attention. I've got built-in armor now. Go on, feel. That's all right, man. I'll take your word for it. How'd you end up with that stuff on your arms if you got stabbed in the stomach? Sensei says my body adapted to the metal while it was trying to use my chakra to heal the wound or something like that. I ended up absorbing a bunch of the stuff. Arf, arf. You're right, Akamaru. That does explain why Naruto smelled strange. To Naruto, he asked, it doesn't hurt or anything? Nah, It's actually sort of weird not being able to feel stuff where the armor is. Naruto and Kiba, with occasional commentary from Akamaru, continued to talk for about half an hour or so, mostly catching up on what was happening at the academy, which girls were following that asshole Sasuke around now, and their respective training regimes before the puppy up and whined, covering his floppy ears with his paws. Yeah, I hear it too, Akamaru. I gotta go, Naruto. Mom's calling for me with the dog whistle and she sounds pissed. She probably found out I haven't cleaned the kennels yet. Before the boy could exit the clearing, Naruto called out to him. I get another day off in 2 weeks. You want to hang out some then? That sounds good, man. Akamaru and I come here to train all the time. We'll be on the lookout. And with that, he was gone. Hiruzen was enjoying a pleasant smoke, basking in the glory that was a desk free of paperwork, at least for the time being. His former student, Jiraiya, the last of them still loyal to Konoha, sat opposite him, kicked back in a chair with sandal-clad feet resting squarely on the Hokage's desk. The younger man had important duties outside the village and did not often find time to visit. You owe me a bottle of the good stuff, old man, claimed Jiraiya. And why is that? Because I figured out what that seal array was meant to accomplish, the one the brat stumbled across. Of course, if it was left intact for proper study, I would have been able to tell you about its purpose months ago. The sage accused with a mock glare. Hiruzen shrugged unapologetically. Whether or not it had remained inert for decades, the mysterious array was too large a potential danger, and as leader of the village, he would have been negligent to leave it to be activated. Aha, you act all nonchalant now, Professor. Can you pull it off when I tell you the array was a priceless cultural heritage site? Jiraiya took special delight in seeing his old mentor's eyes widen slightly. That'll do, super pervert, that'll do. You ever wonder how the Shodaime was able to whip up a forest covering more than half the land of fire practically overnight? Well, Hiruzen groused. Shit. He had to concede that Jiraiya deserved to rub this one in his face. Now which drawer did he keep the good sake in and which housed the really good stuff he saved for the daimyo? Screw the sake, Jiraiya thought. That sour look on Sensei's face is worth it. It was getting late and Naruto would soon need to go to sleep if he didn't want to be a miserable wretch in the morning. He did have a little time, though. Sitting on his bed, Naruto flipped a broken kunai thoughtfully. Even with a third of the blade snapped off, he could repair it easily enough using another piece of scrap as source material. That was not to be the weapon's fate. Dropping the kunai, Naruto rapidly went through a long set of hand seals and called out, Iron Release. False Life Transformation. A small cloud of smoke enveloped the kunai. As Naruto's control and proficiency with the technique improved, the excess chakra residue released as smoke lessened greatly. The smoke faded away in a few moments to reveal a rough metallic approximation of Akamaru. Naruto watched closely as the technique slowly took complete effect. White fur grew into place and the puppy's eyes soon shined with the appearance of life. Within less than a minute there was what appeared to be a perfect duplicate of Kiba's partner sitting on his bed. Arf! Naruto winced at the harsh metallic bark, sounding not unlike scratching nails down a chalkboard. While the technique remained in effect, he mentally commanded its actions. The practice was necessary, because no matter how lifelike his creations appeared or how well they responded to his thoughts, they still didn't move properly. Iron Akamaru's gait was too unnatural to escape notice by any but the most unobservant. The creation remained for just over 5 minutes, a new record for the boy. At least that was some improvement. Now he just needed to cut down on the number of necessary hand seals, do away with all the smoke, hurry up the transformation, and get the hang of moving non-human creations in a believable manner. Working out how to stop the imitations from collapsing into a pile of fine iron powder when the technique ended would also be nice. Naruto was confident he could work out those issues in the next 2 weeks so he could show it off to the old man. I gotta remember not to do that on the bed next time, Naruto thought with a sigh as he went off in search of a broom. Best to get the mess cleaned up before Sensei took notice. Naruto halted the technique mid-cast, reflexively pulling himself underground to avoid being struck by the horizontal column of roaring water spit at him by Sensei. There would be time later to complain about having a ninjutsu battle against a jounin capable of initiating his techniques many times faster than him. Then again, fair wasn't exactly in the ninja handbook. The ninja in training drew a double brace of shuriken and flooded chakra into the projectiles, working his will upon the metallic structure of each. Prepared for his counterstroke, Naruto flared chakra, blasting upward with extreme speed. His momentum was enough to carry him several meters into the air. Sensei was nowhere to be seen, as Naruto expected. He quickly threw each handful of shuriken to either side in a widespread pattern and activated his most practiced technique, the one he could perform silently with only a single hand seal. Iron Release. False Life Transformation. Naruto was already knifing back into the earth below, correctly expecting another attack from Sensei at any moment. On the surface above, each haphazardly thrown shuriken released a large cloud of smoke from which emerged a life-sized representation of Naruto, otherwise perfect except for their gray metallic sheen. Color and life seemed to bleed into the iron clones as their submerged creator established active chakra links with them. Each semi-autonomous duplicate functioned as an extension of Naruto's will, relaying sensory information to the boy's mind and responding to his desires. Though hidden beneath the earth, Naruto now had a perfect image of the world above as seen from 8 sets of eyes. Forcing his brain to accommodate the multiple sets of data from each clone was a mildly unpleasant sensation that would result in a splitting headache if the technique was maintained for too long. One of his clones noticed Sensei dart from behind a tree and moved to engage the Jounin in taijutsu. This was meant to be a strictly ninjutsu exercise, but Naruto figured that having a ninjutsu technique using taijutsu was the kind of creative rule-bending a ninja should strive for. A lightning bolt lanced from Sensei's fingertips, slagging the approaching clone's head and permanently disrupting it. 3 clones moved to surround the Jounin, each wary of the devastating pinpoint attacks he preferred to employ, while the remaining 4 took up cover positions. Naruto used the opportunity to switch places with an iron clone crouched behind a boulder, smoothly engaging a replacement technique to return to the surface. Another clone fell in the time it took to execute the switch. Doubting he would succeed but hoping for a lucky victory, the boy made a ram seal and concentrated on the link to the 2 functional clones still trading blows with Sensei, preparing to detonate each in an explosive spray of razor-edged shrapnel. The cold edge of a kunai being pressed against his throat caused Naruto to stiffen. "You are not the only one capable of using clone techniques, Naruto," Sensei said. Naruto slumped as the kunai was withdrawn. "Ah, Sensei, I was just starting to have fun," he whined. Seeing the Jounin's duplicate lose its form and collapse into a mound of mud, he dispelled his clones, each poofing away in a shower of sparkling metallic dust. "Perhaps treating this encounter as a game is the reason your situational awareness was so poor just now?" Naruto grumbled to himself as Sensei dissected his performance the entire trip home. "Check it out, Sensei!" exclaimed Naruto, waving his bared right arm enthusiastically. Ebisu, just having returned with a fresh bundle of scrolls and a new pot of chakra-laced ink, could only stare in stupefied disbelief as Naruto pressed an ordinary kunai to what very much appeared to be a storage seal etched directly into the iron sheathing his arm and commanded, "Seal!" The kunai disappeared, presumably into a storage seal attached directly to the iron forming Naruto's artificial secondary chakra network. And Ebisu nearly had a heart attack, dropping the armload of scrolls and spilling ink on down the front of his uniform. "Naruto, what the hell do you think you're doing?" the dismayed Jounin barked. Naruto's worldview had to do a rapid readjustment. Sensei had just addressed him by name, cursed, and showed a total lack of composure. All first-time occurrences in the 14 months they'd worked together. These were things that just didn't happen, like the sun rising in the west and frogs raining from the sky. Naruto immediately understood that he had done something wrong and was in trouble for it. That would be a first as well. Despite annoying and frustrating Sensei over the months, he'd never earned his wrath. "You stupid child. Did you not listen to any of my lectures on the danger of experimentation with seals?" Ebisu crossed the room more quickly than Naruto could perceive, suddenly standing only inches away. He snatched the boy's seal-decorated arm to examine more closely. "I'm surprised you didn't just carve an array into your kidney. That would have been no less foolish," Ebisu muttered as he turned the arm this way and that, heedless of Naruto's discomfort, checking the seal for errors. Fighting to keep the tears prickling at the corners of his eyes from showing, Naruto remained silent. How could things go bad so quickly? He'd been eager to show Sensei his new trick, sure that the man would find it interesting. Now one of the very few people he cared about, who had ever treated him with any kindness or respect in his entire life, towered over him with a look of utter contempt on his face. Gods, it hurt worse than all the glares and snide comments and nastiness directed his way by the villagers throughout his whole life. "I think I'm gonna puke," Naruto thought miserably. "Go to your room and do not leave until I say otherwise," Ebisu snapped at his student, allowing the arm to slip limply from his grasp. "If I feel you channel so much as 1 iota of chakra, I will drag you before Hokage-sama himself and wash my hands of you." Naruto turned away quickly so Sensei would not see him cry. Stupid Sensei, he thought with a sniffle. Neither sensei nor student took notice of the storage seal on the boy's arm fading away, leaving the iron armor once more unblemished. The kunai was nowhere to be seen. Hours later, Ebisu crept quietly into Naruto's room. The boy looked miserable even in sleep, with his head half buried beneath a pillow and the blanket clutched tightly against his chest. He hadn't really expected to find his student sleeping. Brooding over the revenge he would shower upon his sensei for treating him so badly, yes, asleep, not so much. Checking the stairwell, hall, and doorway for traps might have been excessive caution. He would just wait until morning to apologize for his abysmal behavior. Ebisu wished to excuse his words and actions as those of a concerned mentor rightly horrified by what he saw as a grave breach of common sense. But the justification fell short even in his own head. There was no excuse to be so harsh with the boy. It was obvious Naruto hadn't thought he was doing anything sneaky or forbidden. Else he would not have so loudly announced his actions the moment his sensei returned. In the dim moonlight filtering in through Naruto's bedroom window, Ebisu nearly stumbled across an unseen bundle. Once his footing was steady, he crouched to examine the obstacle, finding it to be an old duffel bag he'd retrieved from Naruto's apartment when the boy first came to live with him. It was stuffed to bursting with Naruto's belongings. "Oh, you heartless bastard," Ebisu thought to himself. "Now look what you've gone and done." Had Naruto decided to leave, returning to his apartment? The boy could easily petition for re-entry into the ninja academy, his skills more than adequate to the task. Or did he fear his sensei was going to force him to leave? Yes, an apology was due in the morning. Naruto woke from a night of fitful sleep, half-remembered nightmares still plaguing his thoughts. Each had been a variation on an old theme. Naruto always alone, kicked out of the academy, no friends or even the old man to talk to. He couldn't recall the last time he'd suffered from those painful dreams. Rubbing the sleep from his eyes, Naruto noticed the amount of light filling his room, immediately realizing he'd overslept. Sensei was gonna kill him. When he finished untangling the overly grabby blanket and dragged himself from bed, Naruto took only a couple steps before tripping over an obstacle sitting in the middle of his room. Horror flooded through him at the sight of the bag, memories of the day before finally intruding upon his mind. Sensei was gonna make him leave. Naruto felt his eyes prickling again and focused the entirety of his will upon simply not letting tears come. He was 11 now, much too old to be crying like a baby. If his stupid asshole of a sensei kicked him out, he would leave with his head held high and no sign of the burning despair he felt eating away at his insides like acid. The boy was staring so intently at the bag holding most of his worldly possessions, he didn't notice the figure now standing in the doorway. Ebisu drew Naruto's attention with a soft cough. As soon as he saw Sensei, the boy's convictions fled and he launched himself at the man. His target did not dodge and was captured in a crushing hug. With a grunt of discomfort caused by the boy who did not understand his own strength, Ebisu awkwardly patted his sobbing student on the shoulder. "I'm so sorry, Sensei," Naruto was eventually able to say between hiccups and sniffles. "I don't want to leave. I promise I won't be stupid anymore." Were those his ribs creaking? Once Ebisu was able to pry himself from Naruto's grasp, he crouched down so he would both be at eye level with the boy. "Naruto, you have nothing to apologize for. You made a mistake and I shamefully overreacted. It is I who owe you an apology. You are a brilliant if unorthodox student, not a stupid child at all." He paused and let the obviously confused boy process his statement. "I have never before acted so unprofessionally. It would not be remiss for you to report my actions to Hokage-sama." More than a minute passed as adult and child stared at one another. Finally, Naruto wiped his eyes with the back of his sleeve and said, "Stupid sensei, you forgot to change your clothes." Then Ebisu realized he was still wearing the ink-stained uniform from the day before. How embarrassing. It was hours later when Ebisu noticed Naruto's arm was now free of the storage seal that had led to the unpleasant incident of the day before. He asked his student how he was able to etch the near-indestructible metal in the few minutes he'd gone without supervision and how he was able to erase it so easily. "I didn't get a chance to tell you, Sensei. That's what's so cool about it. I didn't have to use ink or anything to make the storage seal. I just used the one you left me to study as a guide and caused my armor to look exactly the same. Watch." It was much easier, only a moment of concentration this time, to bring the seal into being, almost as if the iron remembered the pattern. Ebisu observed a storage seal appear on Naruto's arm. One moment it was a blank expanse of silvery blue iron and the next there was a seal. He could have kicked himself for not realizing this possibility earlier. Not the use of thought-manifested seal array, That was a special Naruto level of insane brilliance he thankfully lacked. But the idea that the iron sheathing so much of his student's form could be manipulated as easily as he controlled any other metal object he was in contact with. Stupid sensei, indeed, Ebisu thought with a shake of his head. I forgot all about my kunai, Naruto announced, drawing Ebisu from his minor shocked revelation. Release! And from a seal that had previously been erased, Ebisu had seen the unmarked iron with his own 2 fully functional eyes. A kunai materialized in his student's waiting hand. The Jounin's legs went numb. Is this what a stroke feels like? Hey, old man! Greeted Naruto with a wave and a grin. Hiruzen smiled at young friend. Hello, Naruto. Ebisu tells me that you have discovered a most unusual aspect of your unique abilities. You bet your wrinkled old ass I have. Ebisu had not quite closed the heavy oak door of his office, allowing the Hokage's secretary to hear Naruto's crass remark. She squawked indignantly, but her no doubt blistering verbal tirade was cut short by the door latching shut and automatic privacy seals activating. Well, sensei thinks it's unusual. I think it's just more proof that I'm awesome. After Naruto's short and excited explanation of his pure awesomeness, Hiruzen asked for a demonstration. The boy rolled back his sleeves and a look of concentration briefly touched his face. A storage seal appeared in identical positions on the iron sheathing each of his forearms. Release! Naruto commanded, catching a familiar iron rod that appeared from the seal of his left arm. Ebisu's reports on how well the rod served Naruto as a weapon during training only confirmed in his mind the decision he'd made to pass it off to the boy. Seal! The rod disappeared into the remarkably created array on Naruto's left arm, only to appear from his right arm when he again repeated, Release! That was quite awesome, Hiruzen admitted with a chuckle. Ebisu looked strained, he noticed. Even with more than a year of experience dealing with Naruto, the Jounin still had things to learn about the young Jinchuriki of the Kyuubi. Sometimes, when Naruto was involved in a situation, you just had to roll with the punches. Unusual might be something of an understatement, Hiruzen remarked. Have you experimented with this ability using any other seals? No, Hokage-sama. We came to visit you immediately after working out that the seal would function without ripping Naruto's arms off. Again, you demonstrate commendable foresight, Ebisu. Before any further experiments with new seals are attempted, I would like for Naruto to have a more thorough grounding in both the practice of and the theory behind the sealing arts. Once you believe Naruto has mastered a seal that could prove useful in light of his newly revealed talent, we will both supervise its experimental application. Yes, Hokage-sama. To Naruto, Hiruzen said, Naruto, you may continue using storage seals in conjunction with your armor, but please do so with caution. You got it. Old man, want to come to dinner with us? It's ramen night and sensei is paying. Release! Naruto caught the still steaming hot cup of instant ramen and passed it to Chuji. 1 cup wouldn't be missed since he still had 5 sealed away for emergencies. He offered Shikamaru and Kiba a cup, but they declined. What kind of freak turns down free ramen? He was sure Akamaru would have accepted if he was present. He was an awesome dog like that. Thanks, Naruto. Chuji retrieved a pair of engraved Akimichi manufactured chopsticks from his kunai pouch and went to work. From his place sprawled on the grass of the clearing, Shikamaru barely glanced away from his incessant cloud watching to comment. Storage seals aren't supposed to work that way, Naruto. Ha, well mine do. Sensei helped me figure out how to keep the ramen fresh and hot. Not that he knew that was the goal, but what he doesn't know can't come back to bite me in the ass later. Sensei was smart as hell, and even though he didn't act like he'd figured out Naruto's ulterior motives in learning the much more advanced storage seal, the boy wouldn't be shocked to learn his subterfuge had been seen through from the get-go. The guys didn't need to know that. Troublesome, was the dark-haired boy's only response, turning back to the clouds instead of miring himself any deeper in Naruto's odd fascination with ramen. Mournfully staring down into the devastated remains of his empty cup, Chuji said, That is so cool, Naruto. Does it work with other stuff or just ramen? All kinds of stuff, man. Keeps ice cream cold, too. Naruto laughed outright at the worshipful expression on his chubby friend's face. To Kiba he asked, Where's Akamaru at anyway? The Inuzuka boy and his young ninja dog were normally inseparable. Kiba paused in his none too gentle pounding of the wooden training post to respond. Mom's making him spend time with Hana's dogs this week. Apparently our ninja dogs have clan secrets of their own they pass down to one another. I don't think that's fair at all. He lashed out at the wooden post, gauging it deeply with his long chakra-strengthened fingernails. It doesn't sound like that big of a problem. We all know Akamaru is the brains of your operation anyway, teased Naruto. They're probably just teaching him a secret technique to mind control their human pets. Shikamaru snorted, revealing that he wasn't really asleep, and Chuji laughed merrily. Oi, that's not true. Have you been talking to Ino? She started the same stupid rumor last year and it took months to go away. Blondes. So troublesome. Seriously? Kiba muttered darkly, glaring at Naruto and Chuji, both laughing too hard at his plight to respond. Ebisu's wooden bow staff clacked sharply against Naruto's much heavier iron pole, the Jounin taking care to deflect his student's powerful strike lest it splinter the less robust weapon. That was the secret to combating the boy's seemingly prodigious strength. Deflect, parry, and dodge. At close range, Naruto's every attack had to be treated as a potentially crippling injury in the making. Operating under the effects of constant chakra enhancement, a necessity due to his peculiar condition, Naruto did not broadcast the telltale surges of chakra another ninja would release when temporarily boosting their bodies to perform some superhuman feat or another. His was just a steady thrumming presence for anyone with the ability to sense it. Not all ninja learned to detect those signals, just one of the reasons why few survived long enough to attain Jounin rank. Ebisu was one of these ninja, for all the good it did in this situation, as lack of the expected cues made fighting Naruto at a level appropriate to the boy's skill a little stressful. The overhead blow turned aside and its follow-up sweep avoided by a wide margin. Ebisu knew better than to let his guard down. While his bow was a static weapon, his student's was not. The whole point of this exercise was to force the boy to apply his rather devious creativity to that hunk of chakra conductive iron he so adored. He did not want his student to be merely adequate, but instead a terror to fight, with a tool that could be anything its wielder could imagine from one moment to the next. To facilitate this, Naruto was barred from using the weapon in any single form for more than 3 consecutive attacks. The threat of no ramen privileges for a week was perhaps a bit too much motivation, Ebisu would later consider. Over the better part of an hour, Naruto cycled through more than a dozen random blunt instruments, tried a variety of swords, used the bow-like pole several times, and even attempted to wield his weapon in the form of a halberd once. A proper halberd was not an easy weapon for Naruto to manage, it was too long and he was too short. That little misstep nearly ended the spar early. Ebisu updated his mental notes of which weapons appeared to best suit his student style for later. It was all well and good that Naruto gained some proficiency with as many forms as possible, but it was unfeasible to expect him to become truly skilled with more than a few. As Naruto's iron pole suddenly lengthened dramatically, losing its rigidity in the process, Ebisu was forced to sacrifice his bow staff and dodge with a chakra-enhanced burst of speed. The boy cackled as he twirled his improvised whip with unnatural, snaking precision. The sharp crack of its dagger-like tip breaking the sound barrier only accentuated how dangerous this new variation could be. Excellent choice, Naruto, congratulated Ebisu. He drew a pair of kunai and upped his own speed to better match Naruto's now heightened threat level. I almost got you that time, sensei. Naruto cracked his whip, again missing sensei but destroying the kunai used to deflect the strike. Could be repaired easily enough afterward. Naruto yelped, nearly dropping his rod-turned whip, when Ebisu darted forward to take advantage of the longer-ranged weapon's lack of close-range utility. He did drop it, however, when the man's kick connected solidly with his armored sternum, blasting him off his feet and into a roll that left him grounded and disoriented. A kunai pressed against Naruto's throat once again ended the spar. They always ended like that. No matter how much he learned or how fast he became, Sensei was always that much faster. He was getting tired of the sensation of that damned kunai tickling his neck. One day he'd laugh and end up with a second smile. Thanks, Tucci, it was great as always. See ya next time, I am. Naruto decided that once he became a ninja and started earning the big-time Ryo, when he could afford as much Ichiraku's ramen as he wanted, stupid small allowance, he would give up the instant stuff forever. It even made sense from a ninja's point of view. Store enough Ichirakus away in his seals and he could avoid all sorts of potential hazards in the field. Fresh ramen at night without risking a visible fire. Fresh ramen prepared by trusting hands not waiting to poison the nosy foreign ninja. Fresh ramen. His stomach pleasantly engorged, Naruto set off for the student training ground where he often met with the guys on his free days. He had not traveled more than a block when he caught sight of a far-off head of lovely pink hair. Could it be, after nearly 2 years out of the academy, had he finally found Sakura? Naruto cursed his lack of a passable body flicker. Progress on the technique was slow, and if he attempted to use it now to catch up to Sakura before she disappeared, he would probably end up ramming his head through some unsuspecting villager's living room wall. He caught up with Sakura shortly, having only lost sight of her a handful of time. She was stepping into an unfamiliar flower shop just as Naruto rounded the corner. Hadn't Shikamaru lazily mentioned at some point that Ino's parents owned a flower shop? If this was Ino's parents' shop, it seemed kinda odd to see Sakura visiting. According to Kiba's complaints, based mostly on the volume of the girls' many violent shouting matches, Ino and Sakura's silly competition to garner Sasuke's attention had progressed to a heated rivalry. Naruto still couldn't figure that situation out at all. When he'd been withdrawn from the academy, both girls were still on friendly enough terms, shifting between sighing dreamily or making googly eyes at Sasuke and giggling together conspiratorially over some unfathomable girl-type stuff. Never having had cause to enter a flower shop, the only girl he knew was Ayame. Naruto opened the door and entered cautiously. Maybe the ramen-slinging girl would like a flower? Crazy, forehead. Ami does not have a pair of Sasuke's boxers. That was Ino screeching. Well, that's what she said, and the pair she was waving around was Sasuke's brand. I wouldn't make up a story about something so important. You stupid pig. Sakura responded with equal if not greater force. And on that note Naruto slipped right back out the door, hoping neither girl noticed his very brief presence. Even though it would have been awesome to say hi to Sakura and get a good look at her after so much time, he had no intention of getting drawn into whatever insanity had infected his former classmates. Sasuke, you poor bastard. I do not make this recommendation lightly, Hokage-sama, Ebisu said. Hiruzen was a bit dumbfounded, to be honest. Ebisu and Naruto had developed a very effective teacher-student relationship. Naruto's reported skills as a ninja trainee greatly exceeded where he would have expected them to be had he remained in the academy. Ebisu, staid and stoic Ebisu, might not realize it, but he'd grown into his role as a teacher while overseeing Naruto's education. He didn't just teach, he genuinely cared about his students' progress, going so far as to learn new skills with the express purpose of passing them on to Naruto. So, all things considered, it was strange for the Jounin was looking to terminate his very lucrative teaching contract prematurely. He quirked an eyebrow and gestured for Ebisu to continue his argument. Naruto has proven to be an exceptional student, Hokage-sama, exceeding my earliest estimates with ease. He has the beginnings of a serviceable taijutsu style to complement his physical power and unique weapon, a well-developed school of personal ninjutsu, and his seal work alone will one day make him an asset to the village. His only glaring weakness is his inability to cast any but the most simplistic of jinjutsu. Ebisu paused before admitting, to be fair, most children accepted into the ninja academy would also excel if given the full attention of a dedicated instructor for 2 years. While I could undoubtedly further Naruto's education with another year to work with him, it would not be fair to my student. How would another year of personal instruction be unfair to Naruto? He already possesses the skills you would expect to find in a seasoned genin on the cusp of promotion to Chunin rank, Hokage-sama. At this point, he only lacks the necessary experience. In another year my student would definitely be worthy of elite Chunin status, but lacking in any field experience. Then, as a best-case scenario, he would spend a minimum of 6 months to a year working with a genin team who did not have the advantage of specialized tutelage. Ebisu obviously had not come to this decision lightly or without great thought. It would be a stifling environment for Naruto Hokage-sama. Better to allow him to spend his time as a genin when he can actually be a genin despite his age. It was only a few short years ago when we regularly graduated children years younger than my student. Between conclusion of the last great ninja war reducing the need for troops to replace casualties and the controversy tied to the assumption by the populace at large that promoting Uchiha Itachi too far, too quickly, had led to the bloody massacre of his family, standard graduation age had been increased to 13 years or older. Though this was not a true law written in the books, the Hokage's word was the law. Hiruzen nodded, contemplating his Jounin's reasoning. As Naruto's teacher, he began, silently adding, and a man in whom I have trusted the well-being of a child I would be proud to call my grandson. Your opinion obviously carries great weight with me in regards to his education. He set his unlit pipe aside and said, I must give this matter some thought. You are dismissed for now, Ebisu. You're shitting me, right? Kiba demanded, skeptical of Naruto's claim. Arf, reiterated Akamaru. No joke. I just wanted to say hi and see how Sakura was doing. Naruto ignored or didn't notice his companions rolling their eyes. But her and Ino were arguing about some other girl having Sasuke's underwear. They were jealous. I hope they didn't notice me there or they might try to silence me. Arf. Well, at least Akamaru believed him. Fine then, if you guys don't believe me, you can just ask one of them in class tomorrow. He pouted. If the girls didn't try to eliminate any of the boys, then he, too, should be safe. True or not, I for one don't want to talk about Sasuke's underwear, interjected Shikamaru. This whole conversation is on the verge of becoming troublesome. Naruto would have rather sparred with his friends, but Kiba was a sore loser. Choji wasn't interested in fighting on the weekend, and Shikamaru wouldn't even have deigned to dignify the offer with a response. Sigh. The things he did for his friends. Wanna play shogi? The Nara boy regarded him with one skeptical eye cracked partially open. Maybe you should play checkers with Akamaru instead, Kiba said with a laugh. You almost beat him last time. Arf. Akamaru is a badass like that, Naruto said in his defense. Akamaru, buddy, you need to keep your human in line. He's getting mouthy again. He had to dodge a pebble flicked his way by the young Inuzuka. Arf. Arf. It's so not cool when you gang up on me with this asshole, Akamaru, Kiba muttered. Thank you for meeting on such short notice, Ebisu. The Sandaime Hokage was not alone when Ebisu entered the aged leader's office. Might Guy, arguably one of Konoha's most powerful jounin, and without doubt the most eccentric, waved cheerily. I serve at your pleasure, Hokage-sama. He nodded a greeting to his fellow ninja. Please have a seat, gentlemen. Now, Ebisu, your proposal to promote Naruto to Genin rank a year early has presented us with an opportunity that would otherwise be untenable. Guy, if you would bring Ebisu up to speed. Thank you, sir. He'd had enough dealings with the green-clad man over the years to be prepared for some of the strangeness that was sure to come next. Ebisu, word of your youthful efforts to fan Uzumaki Naruto's flames of youth inspired me to petition Hokage-sama for an apprentice of my own, Guy announced. Oh bother. He was going to be blamed for whatever insanity Guy ended up causing in his soon-to-be apprentice. Guy went on to explain, in between exclamations of youthfulness, his desire to take on an apprentice from the soon-to-graduate academy class, a student who had caught the Jounin's eye with his steadfast determination to become a ninja despite an incredible handicap. Ebisu was frankly astonished a student had been accepted into the academy that had no ability to mold chakra. The Hokage was inclined to grant Guy's request, if only because of his long and loyal service to the village, but doing so would not only rob him of a most promising Jounin teacher for a Genin squad, there would also be a team one Genin short of complete. Guy had already pulled enough strings and promised enough favors to guarantee the boy's graduation. Behind the dark lenses of his sunglasses, Ebisu shot a glance at the Hokage. The village leader's kind old eyes practically twinkled with suppressed mirth. And so you see, by allowing Naruto to graduate early, Guy not only gets his apprentice, you are able to stay on as Naruto's instructor in the role of his Genin team leader. The Hokage's cheerful conclusion sounded vaguely Guy-like. Surely he wasn't contagious? The solution did make a certain amount of sense, Ebisu conceded. Before the possibility of Naruto's early promotion entered the fray, Guy was slated to lead the graduating class's most promising Genin team. Using the traditional Konoha arrangement of pairing the best-scoring male and female ninja alongside the lowest-scoring, Lee would be Guy's student one way or another. Naruto would not have been the lowest-scoring ninja of the class, Ebisu was most certain, but since he technically had no academy scores to judge him by, those records having been purged, the boy could be slotted into Lee's place with a minimum of fuss. This whole scheme hinged on Ebisu agreeing to take on a Genin team. It was not a very difficult decision to make actually. His entire career as a Jounin and most of his time as a Chunin were spent teaching in one capacity or another. He had considered putting his name forward to lead a team, if some years in the future. If Ebisu accepted the Hokage's offer, not only would Naruto get a well-deserved promotion, he would be able to continue teaching the boy alongside a pair of skilled young ninja. Finally, after discussing the matter for several more minutes, learning relevant information, his potential team's names and specialties, and the useless Guy's hopeful plans to take a year-long leave of absence from performing missions to devote his full attention to Lee, Ebisu said, I wish to accept your offer, Hokage-sama. I would be pleased to lead Naruto's team. Yash! Guy exclaimed, pulling Ebisu in an enthusiastic hug too quickly for him to protest. Our students shall be veritable bonfires of youthful flames. If nothing else, Ebisu thought while struggling heroically to escape Guy's grasp. By taking team lead, I am saving 2 future Konoha ninja from this man's insanity. Ebisu was just putting the finishing touches on an entry into his financial ledger when he heard Naruto's habitual announcement of I'm home, followed by the sound of the front door slamming harder than absolutely necessary. He had been fully prepared to pay a hefty penalty for terminating the teaching contract between himself and Hokage-sama. Prepared but not expecting it. The Sandaime Hokage was generous with his ninja and seemed quite happy with advancing Naruto ahead of schedule. What Ebisu had not expected at all was to receive a bank note from the village leader covering what would have been his final A-rank mission payments for the last 2 6th-month increments of Naruto's 3-year training stint and the promised S-rank bonus pay. Added to his previous savings and the reduced stipend he would receive for early retirement, Ebisu was now wealthy enough that he could leave the ninja forces entirely and live a peaceful, danger-free life. Or he could take the recently offered post as chief administrator of the Ninja Academy, a highly respected position in Konoha. Despite not being an S-ranked combat monster, an appellation many foolish young ninja aspired to, his financial solvency and the acclaim he had amassed in education circles was quite an accomplishment for a man not yet 30 years old. Instead, here he was about to take up lead of his first Genin team. On average, barring extraordinary circumstances such as complete annihilation or unusually rapid promotion to Chunin rank, a Genin team was under the command of their Jounin instructor for approximately 3 years. Not only was the Jounin expected to continue the Genin's education in the basic ninja arts, they also had the responsibility for preparing the young soldiers for eventual integration into the larger military structure of the village. This included imparting proper mission etiquette, raising their fieldcraft to a certain minimal level, ascertaining which specialized role each Genin should apply for upon promotion to Chunin, and helping them to gain the necessary skills to be accepted into that chosen career path. The skill set of a hunter ninja was different from an infiltration specialist, while a long-range scout shared traits of both, and so on. Ebisu found himself excited at the prospect. Naruto, he called loudly before Naruto could make it to the stairwell. Would you step into my study for a moment, please? What's up, sensei? Naruto asked a few moments later as he entered the room. The boy had finally grown skilled enough with his transformation technique to maintain it for long periods of time without worrying about it failing due to a lapse in concentration. This allowed him to disguise the iron armor sheathing much of his form without wearing long-sleeved garments and full-length pants. While as adapted to Fire Country's warm climate as the next Konoha citizen, Naruto was more sensitive to long-term heat exposure than most due to his armor. Thus, the orange t-shirt and black shorts his student now wore instead of the jumpsuit he once favored. As you may or may not be aware, the senior-most class of Genin hopefuls is scheduled to graduate from the academy this coming Friday, 5 days hence. Naruto nodded in the affirmative. After extensive negotiations with Hokage-sama, I have secured you a place among those graduating Genin, Naruto. Naruto stood there, remarkably silent, mouth gaping open, closing, and then gaping again. Not showing any sign of his amusement over Naruto being struck speechless, Ebisu continued. As part of my agreement with Hokage-sama, I will be assuming command of your Genin team. He had more news to share with Naruto, but was halted when the boy finally overcame his shock. Wahahaha, I'm so awesome. You're awesome too, sensei. The boy was literally vibrating with barely contained glee, rocking back and forth on the balls of his feet and looking slightly demented. Woohoo, early graduation. Or is it promotion, since I'm not in the academy? Bah, who cares? I'm gonna be a ninja. Ebisu was unable to contain the small grin Naruto's behavior elicited, though he remained on guard and ready to dodge if the boy looked like he was preparing to hug him. In Naruto's current excited state, the Jounin wasn't sure he'd survive the experience. I'll be right back. Don't go anywhere. I've got to get to the tower before the old man leaves. The boy disappeared in a wordless, seal-free body flicker. This one not the standard swirling leaf Konoha variant, but a puff of metallic glitter. Ebisu was not aware that his student had even performed a successful body flicker technique, let alone mastered it to such an extent. Naruto groaned, trying to comb the bits of broken masonry from his hair without making the throbbing of everything above his neck any worse. Spontaneous body flickers might look cool, but they hurt like a son of a bitch when you missed your target and face planted into a brick wall. He could take some small comfort that the wall, one belonging to a cafe he knew to be just over halfway between home and the Hokage's tower, had fared far worse than his skull. It took 3 attempts to fight through the dizziness and get his transformation back in place. This time he went with a more comprehensive illusion, disguising not just his armor, but covering his whisker marks, adding 8 or 9 centimeters to his height, and turning his hair brown. No need to advertise just who it was who'd trashed the cafe. Naruto briefly debated with himself whether he should tell the old man he had been the one to bust the wall, and then thought better of it and shrugged the issue aside. He remembered the place. It was one of many that turned him away over the years, especially when he was younger, the proprietors never bothering to explain why he deserved to be ostracized. With the sun nearly set on a weekend evening, Naruto eventually arrived to find the Hokage Tower almost deserted. He reapplied the transformation once more, dropping most of the illusion in favor of his normal partial cover as he entered the tower. The guards ignored his ascent towards the old man's office, and the ninja normally posted on secretary duty was nowhere to be seen. A final pair of guards in ANBU masks just waved Naruto into the Hokage's office. By now, having learned the Sandaime never barred the boy from entering. Phew. I wasn't sure I could make it before you went home, old man. He plopped down in a chair across from the Hokage's desk. The short walk had done wonders for his wall-induced headache, and the dizziness was long gone. The duties of a Hokage are long and arduous, Naruto. Something to keep in mind for when you wear this hat. The Hokage chuckled. The village leader scribbled something on a piece of parchment and set it aside. You do have good timing, Naruto. That was my final act as Hokage for the day. So, what brings you by my office at this late hour? He retrieved a pouch of tobacco from the desk drawer. He kept various personal effects, tapped a generous portion into the bowl of his trusty pipe, and set the contents alight with a spark of fire-natured chakra glowing on his fingertip. Sensei told me how you were gonna let me become a genin a year early. I just wanted to say thanks. There's no need to thank me, Naruto. You have worked hard and earned your place among the ninja of Konoha. Conscious of the time and not wanting to keep the old man stuck in the tower all night, Naruto only spent a few minutes conversing with him. Most of the discussion centered on his eventual rise to power as the Godame Hokage. Naruto excused himself, promising not to stop by so late again, and was nearly out the door when the Hokage said, "Please stop by tomorrow morning, Naruto. There are weighty matters we must address." "You got it, old man. I'll see you bright and early." Damn, he was good. Not even issued a forehead protector yet, and he was already gonna learn village secrets. Returning home and making his way to Sensei's study, Naruto was met with a pointed look from the Jounin and a gesture toward a waiting broom and dustpan. "What?" he asked, hoping that knock to the head hadn't jarred something loose. He sure didn't remember having any chores left to do today. "The leavings of your excellent example of the body flicker technique, Naruto." He pointed out the sparse coat of sparkling dust littering the polished hardwood floor. "I was not aware you were working on your own variant of the technique. If you can increase the amount of glitter significantly out of doors, of course, your version has potential to double as an effective distraction technique." "Glitter? You mean like the sparkly stuff girls play with?" Naruto cried out, pausing in his cleanup efforts to closely examine the remnants of the body flicker. "That's not what it's supposed to look like at all. There's supposed to be a swarm of knives instead of stupid old leaves. Sensei, you've got to help me. If Kiba ever see me do a glitter body flicker, he'll never let me hear the end of it. If you wish, Naruto, we will dedicate the coming week to perfecting your unusual body flicker." The sensei looked at the floor once more and said, "Your glitter will not remove itself from the floor of my study." "Freaking glitter!" the boy grumbled. Crap, it was even in the cracks between floorboards. Ebisu hid his amusement well, faking a cough to cover a laugh that threatened to bubble up as Naruto diligently removed the hated glitter, complaining darkly all the while. He suspected the glitter was simply a long-lasting and unusual expression of chakra residue. Naruto had a way of making the strange seem altogether common. If allowed to sit long enough, it would probably fade away entirely. This exercise would, however, discourage Naruto from employing techniques in their home he could not properly control. As Naruto finished up, Ebisu opened a folder on his desk and sorted the papers within into 2 short stacks. "Now that the mess has been removed, we will discuss your future teammates. You already know who they're gonna be, even though they haven't graduated yet? I thought it wasn't supposed to work like that." "Please, Naruto, this is a ninja village. Rules can be bent without breaking, and tradition only has a place so long as it is convenient." Ebisu countered with a roll of his eyes. Sometimes his student could be unwholesomely naive. Naruto crossed his arm over his chest and glared impudently. "Now, your teammates are to be Hyuga Neji, Rookie of the Year of his graduating class, and Higurashi Tenten, whose overall score was second only to Neji. We have discussed the Hyuga family in some detail, mostly in regards to their bloodline and specialized taijutsu form it allows them to use to great effect." Naruto nodded, remembering the lessons well. Over the years, Ebisu made a point of teaching his student the capabilities and tactics of every clan and prominent bloodline in Konoha and the rest of those in the elemental nations he was familiar with. It was not secret knowledge, as anyone with an up-to-date bingo book or access to the library could compile it easily enough within hours. Neji has been hailed as a prodigy, the most talented Hyuga born in generations. He is also a member of the branch house. That drew a wince from his student. The boy unsurprisingly shared his disdain for the barbaric seal-enforced servitude forced upon the majority of Konoha's most prominent clan by its ruling line. Higurashi Tenten is civilian-born. Her parents own a high-end smithy that caters exclusively to ninja clientele. This appears to have heavily influenced Tenten's development as a ninja. Her records indicate that she has achieved great proficiency in the use of all types of melee weapons. That got a widening of the eyes from his student. Naruto had struggled to become merely adequate with most weapons and skilled with a bare handful. She also holds the all-time academy record for accuracy with all varieties of thrown projectile weaponry. Whoa! Naruto's accuracy was acceptable in light of the relatively short time he spent practicing the skill. More often than not, however, his motive for tossing about shuriken or kunai was to use the tools as a force multiplier, either through the creation of his metal clones or fragmentation bombs. I have removed confidential personal information from Neji and Tenten's academy files. All that remains are instructor reviews, test scores, and quarterly evaluations for each of your teammates. I expect you to have familiarized yourself with them by this time tomorrow evening, Naruto. I will be developing a rudimentary course of instruction for your teammates to round out their somewhat lopsided distribution of skills. You will be assisting me. That doesn't seem fair, Sensei. Sigh. Life is not fair, Naruto. If it will lessen your sense of outrage, however, you can easily share any information about yourself with your teammates. In fact, you will do exactly that. Since you have not attended classes with your teammates, or they with you, it would be prudent for the team to understand one another's capabilities more fully. I must congratulate you, Naruto. Your demolition efforts yesterday saved one of my Genin teams a bit of work today. Hiruzen chuckled when Naruto's look of confusion changed to flushed cheeks and a nervous grin. Ah, you heard about that, huh? Naruto glanced down at the floor with a guilty expression. I should have told you, old man. Would it be all right to deduct the cost of repairs from my mission pay? Once I actually start taking missions, my allowance barely covers ramen expenses. There is no need, Naruto. The new owner of the property the cafe sits upon engaged the services of a team of Konoha Genin to perform an extended D-rank mission with the express purpose of demolishing the structure. If my ANBU's report is accurate, those Genin probably wish you'd lend them a head already. Lucky, Naruto whispered, guilt washing away to display a relieved grin. Hiruzen slid a large paper-wrapped bundle into Naruto's view from where it had been obscured behind a truly daunting stack of paperwork. What's that, old man? A graduation gift for you, Naruto, Hiruzen answered. He flipped it end over end into the boy's lap. Really? You're the best. Naruto tore the paper away from the package to discover a folded piece of bright orange fabric. He stood and unfolded the cloth with a snap of his wrist and a dramatic flourish, revealing it to be a hooded black-trimmed orange overcoat complete with his trademark black and red spiral centered prominently on the back. Naruto slipped the coat on, then silently released a Konoha issue signal mirror from storage to better admire his appearance. Kick-ass. I look so damned cool. I'm glad you approve, Naruto. I admit the coat does look good on you. However, it serves a much more practical purpose than merely making you look cool. Hiruzen's tone was serious enough to draw Naruto's attention away from himself. Given the nature of your condition, which you have adapted to admirably, you shine as a burning beacon to even the most underdeveloped chakra senses. A true sensor could detect your presence from several kilometers away. Along with a former student of mine, we have incorporated a series of seals into the fabric of your coat that will serve to dramatically mute your chakra presence. Standing before me now, I can attest to its effectiveness. To my not inconsiderable senses, you now appear to have no more than high Chunin chakra levels. Your constant chakra enhancement is completely undetectable. Hiruzen was pleased with his and Jiraiya's work. I must ask that you wear this coat while outside the village walls if there is any chance you could encounter enemy ninja. Naruto stared at him in awe. So, freaking awesome. No longer able to contain himself, he rushed around the Hokage's desk and attached himself to the older man like a human limpet. Hiruzen laughed and returned the enthusiastic hug. You will also find that, thanks to my students' efforts, the cloak is able to easily shed water as well as keep you cool in hot environments and warm in colder ones. For times when anonymity is best, you can turn it inside out. The beige liner will attract much less attention than your preferred orange. It took Naruto a few moments after detaching himself from the old man to overcome his giddiness and process the mention of a student. From Ebisu's instruction, he knew Orochimaru had turned into the worst sort of traitor and Tsunade was a missing ninja in all but name. That left Jiraiya, the Toad Sage, as the only possible student. He was wearing a coat with seal work done by the god of ninja, and his equally legendary student, the famous seal master Ebisu, spoke so highly of. He was said to be an author of great renown, though Naruto had not encountered any of his works. Now he was almost scared to wear the coat. What if it got messed up by some asshole ninja or something? The old man cleared his throat to draw Naruto's attention from imagining every bad thing that could happen to his awesome new coat. Now that you are to become a genin, I must fulfill a promise I made to myself many years ago, and share one of our village's most important secrets with you, Naruto. Yes, I was totally right. The old man is already entrusting me with village secrets. Just over 12 years ago, on the very night you were born, the Kyuubi attacked Konoha. The old man really freaking knew how to pile it on a guy, didn't he? Naruto sat alone with only the sound of his own breathing to keep him company. He was in a hollow iron sphere roughly 4 meters in diameter and at least 30 meters beneath the streets of Konoha. The gentle glow of a toned-down flare seal he'd imprinted on the wall of the sphere saved him from total darkness. The small photo album the old man had given him was safely tucked in a seal. Naruto had stared at its contents until his eyes burned and his head ached. He really wanted to be alone with his thoughts at the moment. Couldn't the old man have maybe spaced those village secrets out over a few months? To think he'd been so eager to learn them straight from the Hokage's own mouth, container of the Kyuubi. Wasn't that just a kick right to the nuts? And because the old man might be getting a little senile in his old age, every single adult in Konoha knew it. Worst kept S-rank secret ever, for sure. That revelation went a long way towards explaining why exactly he'd been treated like shit for as far back as he could remember. Having a living reminder of the gigantic murderous beast that stomped on your village and wiped out significant numbers of your loved ones wasn't going to put anyone in a good mood. That didn't mean you had to be an utter asshole to a poor orphaned kid because of circumstances beyond his control. Even he, a wet behind-the-ears genin-to-be, knew that an item stowed away in a seal was isolated from its container. And speaking of being an orphan, it would have been nice to know the names of his parents as he was growing up. That would answer a long-standing question that had sat at the back of Naruto's mind for years. Where were the Uzumakis? Who were they? Did he look more like his mom or his dad? Well, he need not wonder any longer. He'd gone from knowing absolutely nothing about the people responsible for his birth to maybe knowing too much. Uzumaki Kushina was a pretty red-headed lady, refugee from the long-defunct Whirling Tides ninja village and former Jinchuriki, and if that wasn't the crappiest possible name for a tailed beast container of the Kyuubi. The old man spoke of her with a touch of wistfulness. She was a ninjutsu specialist, though hardly a slouch when it came to kinjutsu, and possessed a powerful bloodline or clan's secret-based ability to create deadly chains of pure chakra. As moms go, not that he had much experience judging such things, Naruto felt he'd gotten a cool one. Naruto wasn't sure if he even wanted to know his father was Namake's Minato. Yeah, that particular Namake's Minato, Yandame Hokage, and widely considered the most badass ninja ever. SS-rank ninja single-handedly credited with winning a war. His father was likely the most hated man in the ninja village of Rock even more than a decade after his death. He'd whipped them good and proper back during the Third Great Ninja War and earned the first ever flea-on-sight order. So great was the power of his awesomeness. If that wasn't enough, then the man had gone on to become the Yandame Hokage at a disgustingly young age, and finished out his short career by offing the Kyuubi with a special suicide technique. Only that's not how it really happened at all, Naruto had learned. His father, the ninja he'd looked up to almost as much as the old man himself, didn't kill the Kyuubi because the beast could not be killed, only contained. What better container than your very own newborn and conveniently handy son? What an asshole. The old man swore up, down, and sideways that Naruto's father wanted nothing more than for him to be viewed as a hero by the village for holding the Kyuubi in check with his very existence. Yeah, that had worked out so well. Hated and reviled at worst, ignored at best, Naruto's early childhood was not very hero-like. If not for the old man's friendship through those early years, Naruto shuddered to imagine how he'd have turned out. There had been some concern, the old man insisted, that telling Naruto about his parents would be dangerous for him. If he started spreading the news around town, there was apparently a very good chance the leadership of Rock, or just someone with a long-held grudge against the Yellow Flash, would take it upon themselves to have Naruto assassinated on general principle. No telling what the little tyke might have inherited from his father, right? Well, no need to worry about Naruto shouting from the rooftops that his dad was the Yellow Flash, amusing as the initial reaction might be. He was too embarrassed for that right now and not nearly strong enough to fight off hordes of assassins, just in case the old man's fears proved true. The yondaime really expected the citizens of Konoha to see him as a hero? Sensei called Naruto hopelessly optimistic and naive. It must run in the family. Thankfully, his mom's blood seemed to have diluted those traits in her son. If the old man was correct, his mom and dad's relationship was secret from all but a few trusted individuals, so it would be safe to publicly be Uzumaki Kushina's son. He could work with that. The Kyuubi, huh? Naruto's voice and the unexpected subject matter snapped Ebisu's head around and focused his attention squarely on the boy. The repetitive and oddly relaxing act of cutting vegetables had dulled his otherwise excellent senses so much that the boy's presence didn't register until he was already in the kitchen and deliberately calling attention to himself. He would have preferred, however, to believe it was his student's stealth skills and the knee-length orange coat Naruto now wore, not a lack of attention that allowed a much less experienced ninja to so readily go unnoticed. Hokage-sama's graduation gift, likely given early to lessen the sting of other, more unpleasant news, certainly seemed effective at masking Naruto's immense chakra. Ah, I see Hokage-sama has finally revealed your status as the Kyuubi Jinchuriki, he acknowledged with a pleased nod. It had not been his secret to tell, after all, and an S-rank one at that. Yeah, I'm a power of human sacrifice. What a stupid name for a container. I've never seen a storage scroll called a power of paper sacrifice. People are dumb, sensei. Ebisu nodded, slightly perturbed by just how unbothered his student seemed. It is an old term from a more primitive time, Naruto. I must admit you don't seem overly concerned to learn that sealed within you is the most powerful of the tailed beasts. Naruto snorted. I was plenty concerned, sensei. I even dug a deep hole and hid like a little kid for a few hours. Then I got over it and went and blew some stuff up. That helped a lot. Slipping away from the cutting board, pleased to see Naruto automatically take over the task of preparing the vegetables for dinner, Ebisu retrieved a tray of tofu from the icebox. He was proud that his student found an outlet for his emotions. Even if it involved blowing stuff up, not everyone found reading a cathartic experience. Did you know my parents, sensei? Naruto asked hesitantly a minute later. Say what? The old man told me a lot and I already knew a bunch about my dad already, but his perspective is like way up here. Naruto raised the piece of cutlery he just finished using to dice a carrot and wave it over his head. At Hokage level. Maybe you knew them more like normal people, right? I'm sorry, Naruto. I must admit to being confused. Hokage-sama was aware of the identity of your parents? He shared this knowledge with you as well as the truth of the Kyuubi's defeat. Yep, it was a great big info dump right into my poor little brain, complained Naruto as he commenced to decimate a pickle. I was not aware anyone knew of your parentage, Ebisu admitted with a frown. Wow, I knew the old man said people didn't know my parents were together, but I just figured he would have told you about them since I've been living with you and all. It seems kinda dangerous for you not to be informed. Ebisu was most interested in how such knowledge could be dangerous. What manner of danger would this be, Naruto? Mostly from Rock Village, I guess. The old man says they've not gotten over just how bad the Yellow Flash trounced them in the last war. He thinks they might get a little assassination happy with his kid. Cloud got kinda grabby with my mom one time, too, like the Hyuga incident way back when. Not for the first time since taking over the education and virtual guardianship of Uzumaki Naruto did Ebisu find himself in a state of shock. He should be accustomed to it by now. Sadly, he was not. Just to clarify, you are the son of the Yondaime Hokage? Ebisu did a remarkable job of sounding like he was taking this in great stride. He'd been tasked with making a ninja of the secret offspring of the greatest hero Konoha had ever known. That was a humbling revelation, a terrifying one as well. What kind of sensei wanted to be responsible for making the Yellow Flash's child anything but the very pinnacle of the ninja arts? Such an example the boy now had to live up to. That was not a healthy measuring stick to judge oneself against, not as a 12-year child just starting his ninja career. Yeah, Namikaze Minato himself, Naruto grumbled, not sounding at all pleased. The asshole who stuck a demon in his kid. So much for a measuring stick. Dinner was eaten in an awkward silence. Ebisu was not certain how to delve further into the subject of Naruto's parentage without possibly offending the boy. For his part, Naruto was just not in a great mood and didn't feel like taking it out on sensei. When the dishes were cleaned and put away, Ebisu used the assignment he'd given Naruto the night before as an opportunity to focus his student's mind elsewhere. Have you taken the time to think of the project I gave you last night, Naruto? Naruto perked up at the mention of the assignment and said, Yeah, I got that over with last night. Hold on 1 second. Let me go grab the files and my notes. He dashed to his room and back, meeting the Jounin in his study. Are you sure these are the complete files for Neji and Tenten, Sensei? No, they are not complete, Naruto. As I told you, medical and other personal information was removed. I got that, Sensei. Naruto rolled his eyes. I meant their academic records. Then yes, they are as complete as any other academy student's file. I should know, Naruto, I was a Chunin instructor for a time. Naruto looked pensive and stared at the folder in his hands. There's so much missing, though, he finally blurted. I couldn't find any mention of their Jinjutsu training, the extent of their sealing knowledge, or what ninjutsu they have been taught beyond the replacement, transformation, and clone techniques. Their chakra affinities aren't even listed anywhere. I guess those might be considered medical information somehow. Ebisu did not snort aloud, though it was a close thing. He'd wished for Naruto to notice this very issue. He had not expected it to inspire what looked like denial of the obvious. You are not mistaken, Naruto. Nor is one's chakra affinity listed in their medical records. It would be best to just get this next part over with quickly, like tearing off an adhesive bandage. Genjutsu is not touched on at the academy except to briefly discuss the concept and possible applications. The most an academy student could be reasonably expected to know about the use of seals is how to insert and remove objects from a storage scroll. The so-called Academy 3, Replacement, Transformation, and Clone are the only ninjutsu techniques taught to academy students. Proficiency with them is normally considered enough preparation for graduation from the academy and initial placement on a team, subject to failure or acceptance by the Genin's Jounin leader. We do not know your teammates' chakra affinities because the academy instructors never bothered to learn them. What? Are you serious, Sensei? Naruto all but shouted. That doesn't make any sense. Sure, his own experience with a personal tutor who worked him like a dog, and who had no use for summer breaks or appreciation for the fine concept of weekends off, accelerated his education. It had only been 2 years, though, and he'd learned so much. With an extra year of normal academy instruction, he'd at least thought his teammates would share an approximate level of skill and knowledge. Your dismay is obvious, Naruto, and quite understandable when viewed within your frame of reference. There are many reasons for the academy to limit what is taught to prospective ninja. I will admit, however, that many of the reasons are not very good at all. Some are even political, Ebisu said sourly. Without wasting time this evening listing our grievances with the academy curriculum, grievances that had led Ebisu to leave his academy teaching position to become a tutor, let us instead return to the matter at hand. I will give you a few minutes to revise your notes before we proceed. With a resigned nod, Naruto retrieved a pencil from his pocket and leaned over to hastily scribble on the notes he'd prepared the night before. Less than a minute later, the boy suddenly asked, "Oh yeah, I forgot to ask about what chakra control exercises they know, Sensei." Only the leaf exercise is taught to academy students. That answer earned rolled eyes and a huff from Naruto. He scratched out 3 lines on the paper and started over. Naruto sat alone in the back of a large academy classroom. It was the first time he'd been here in years. He'd arrived early and under a full body transformation to obscure his identity and make him look a year older. His coat was in stealth mode, turned inside out to hide its blinding orange awesomeness. Today was when the graduating Genin would receive their official team assignments. Naruto didn't really see why he had to be here. Sensei was adamant, though, so here he was, waiting for the room to fill with older kids. At least he had his forehead protector now. It made a pretty good incentive to convince the boy to attend today. Maybe he'd been a little too early. I should have brought a book to read. Wait a second. Ugh. Look what you've reduced me to, Sensei. Longing for a book. Kids started filtering into the room a few minutes later, some looking like they just dragged themselves out of bed and others appeared so nervous they looked twitchy. He recognized Tenten when she entered, though the girl had matured noticeably from the year-old picture in her file. Her brown hair was done up in 2 buns high up on either side of her head. He reminded himself not to make fun of the hairstyle of a girl with a healthy ninja-like obsession for all things sharp and pointy. And she wore an odd dark green shirt, form-fitting but with voluminous sleeves, to go along with her black pants and matching standard-issue ninja sandals. A weapon pouch was strapped to each of her thighs, complemented by another at her waist, a short sword across her back, and what Naruto would guess was a storage scroll from the look of it. She probably kept spares and larger items in the scroll. Tenten caught sight of a purple-haired girl sitting near the front of the room and hurried over to speak with her. The classroom was almost full when Neji walked in a while later. Hyuga were generally hard to miss, with their eerie white eyes and ubiquitous long hair. This Hyuga walked ramrod straight, as if he were already trying to one-up Sensei in a contest for who had the best posture. And the expression on his face was reminiscent of someone who had just tasted something a little too bitter to swallow. Naruto couldn't quite figure out why Neji wrapped his right arm and leg in linen bandages. Actually, it was a ninja fashion trend he'd noticed over the years that continued to defy his understanding. Maybe Neji was covering a recent injury or disguising some really disfiguring scars. Since Sensei hadn't shared medical records with him, he'd just have to keep wondering. Neji found one of 3 remaining seats and started a staring contest with the chalkboard. This guy was just going to be a barrel of laughs. 10 minutes passed and the wall clock he'd stared at while willing time to flow faster with all his might now indicated it was 9 a.m. The door opened once more and a Chunin instructor Naruto was vaguely familiar with led in a whole bunch of jounin he'd never seen before, with the sole exception of Sensei. I would like to congratulate you all and wish you long and successful careers as ninja of Konoha, the Chunin said with a smile. He turned his attention to his clipboard and began by announcing a team number, the appropriate jounin's name, and then calling forward Genin in groups of 3. As each team received its final member, their jounin would quietly lead them from the room. Team 9, under jounin commander Kanugi Ebisu, will be Higurashi Tenten. The girl waved goodbye to her friend and hurriedly walked over to Sensei, who had stepped forward when his name was called. Hyuga Neji. Naruto distinctly heard dreamy sighs from no less than 3 of the females remaining in the room. Oh come on, really? What, Uzumaki Naruto? That definitely caught the Chunin by surprise. He looked at his list, glanced back at Sensei who nodded, and looked at the list again. Grinning at the reaction, Naruto dropped his transformation and waved at the confused man. If you would follow me, I have taken the liberty of reserving an unused room here in the academy for our first team meeting, Ebisu said as he led the Genin away from the classroom where team assignments were still being made. The group's destination had once been a third-floor conference room that was set aside with the intent of teaching an elective course on medical ninjutsu. Those plans fell through not long after their driving force, Princess Senju Tsunade, left the village. Since then, it had served many purposes, from storage space to temporary instructor's lounge. No one ever did get around to teaching that medic course. This place seems way smaller than the last time I saw it, Naruto commented to no one in particular. He was following directly behind Sensei, Tenten at his side with Neji lagging a few feet behind. How long has it been? Tenten asked curiously. Oh, I'm sorry, I should introduce myself. I'm Higurashi Tenten. It's nice to meet you. She smiled and extended her hand. Naruto shook the proffered hand firmly and grinned. It's nice to meet you, Tenten. I'm Uzumaki Naruto. They were in the stairwell now, but progress was halted as a class of children, none looking older than 9, was escorted to physical training disguised as recess by a harried-looking Chunin. She gave Ebisu a nod of thanks for allowing her horde to pass uninterrupted. To Tenten, Naruto answered, It's been just over 2 years now since I was withdrawn from the academy. I hope I wasn't as small back then as these midgets. He pointed to the back of the final student to file past their group, a kid with wearing a long scarf and funny hat. Naruto's example turned to glare, looking ready to fight, but the Chunin escorting the children just grabbed hold of his scarf and dragged him away. If she was confused earlier, now Tenten was just dumbfounded. It was clear her blonde teammate was at least a year younger than her or Neji, and he spoke of being taken out of the academy years ago, so how had he been assigned to her team? Naruto laughed when he noticed Tenten's expression. To answer her obvious, if unspoken question, he said, I was in a bad accident and had to be withdrawn from the academy because no one was sure if I could still be a ninja or not. Once I proved I could work around the problems caused by the accident, the old man hired a tutor to teach me, and here I am. A fist pump and hop in the air punctuated his awesomeness. By this point, they were in a third-floor corridor 1 hallway over from the stairwell. Ebisu led them into a slightly dusty room, one side of which was piled high with broken training dummies and stacks of student-abused textbooks. The other held a wooden table with half a dozen matching chairs flipped over resting on the battered tabletop. Once the chairs were removed and placed on the floor, Ebisu sat and gestured for his team to sit opposite him. As you were informed, my name is Kanugi Ebisu, a jounin of Konoha, Ebisu said by way of introduction. My area of greatest expertise is the instruction of other ninja. Thus I am well versed in all of the ninja arts and skilled in passing my knowledge along to my students. The goal I will work toward, with your assistance, is to mold each of you into the most effective ninja you can be. You may address me by name or refer to me by the moniker of sensei or mentor. He focused his attention on Naruto, sitting between Tenten and Neji, and almost bouncing in his seat. Beginning with Naruto, I would like you each to give a brief introduction, he prompted. Naruto wasn't sure about this business of Ebisu letting them call him anything but sensei. More often than not he forgot the man had any other name. Uzumaki Naruto here. Nice to meet you both. Even if we do already know each other's names and Tenten and I did just kinda do this. Whatever. I just turned 12 a few weeks ago. My favorite color is orange and my favorite place to eat is Ichiraku's. Ramen is the one true food. Sensei taught me to be such a kick-ass ninja that I got promoted early, which is gonna make it even easier to become Hokage one day. So you can believe he really knows his stuff. If Naruto had his way, he'd become the Godame even younger than when his father rose to his position as Yondaime. Unlike dear old dad, Naruto planned on sticking around long enough to let the old man actually enjoy his retirement. It would be embarrassing for the Sandaime to have to take over again in 20 or 30 years. Naruto felt hesitant to share this next piece of trivia, since Sensei was the only one he'd told so far. I used to think I was just a no-name orphan, but I found out from the old man that the Uzumakis were a powerful clan in the village of Whirling Tides, a long-time ally of Konoha. It was destroyed by a bunch of other ninja villages, because they were scared of how awesome Whirling Tides was, and that kicked off the last big ninja war. That wasn't so hard at all. Tenten, if you would? Right? I'm Higurashi Tenten and I'm 13 years old. I'm the first ninja in my family, though many of my ancestors were samurai in Iron Country. I wish to become a powerful and respected female ninja just like Princess Tsunade. My hobby is mastering the use of all the different weapons sold in my parents' shop. My father did not want me to become a ninja. He'd prefer if I stuck to the family business, but my mother has always encouraged me to follow my dreams. Naruto had all kinds of crazy ideas he wanted to talk to Tenten about. And Neji, the white-eyed boy's response, after several uncomfortably long moments of silence, was, I am Hyuga Neji. My destiny is to become a powerful ninja. He offered nothing more. Naruto wasn't sure about this guy at all. No, he was sure Neji had issues. Sensei did not act perturbed by Neji's less than comprehensive intro. As a newly formed Genin team, you are expected to regularly engage in D-rank missions. These missions are supposedly meant as team-building exercises. In reality, they are a form of low-cost labor and busy work intended to give your team leader time to adequately train you to undertake more difficult C-rank missions. Therefore, unless you desire to earn extra spending money, we will perform only the minimum number of D-ranks necessary to meet Chunin exam entry requirements. What the hell, Sensei? Naruto actually needed that spending money. Sensei hadn't said anything about it, but now that he was a Genin, wasn't he supposed to move back into his apartment? He would much rather stay with Sensei and pay the man rent than live alone in his free apartment. Ramen wasn't cheap either, not in the quantities he consumed. We will allot a minimum of 6 hours per day, 6 days a week, to your individual and team training. If you have personal commitments that will interfere with training, I would prefer to be informed well in advance. They were going to get a day off every week, and only 6 hours of training a day? Naruto wasn't sure what he would possibly do with that much free time. He'd have to check with the old man to see if there were any solo D-rank missions he could take. In the coming weeks, my priority will be to begin filling in the gaps in your education left by the academy. Neji, your taijutsu is excellent, of course, and Tenten, your prowess with weapons, especially at range, is quite noteworthy. There will be a time to further refine your base skills after I am satisfied with your progress in other areas. Ebisu removed several sheets of chakra paper from his vest and pushed one across the table to each of his students, Naruto included. It seemed like just yesterday when he first performed this ritual with the boy. When you channel chakra into this specially prepared paper, it will react in a telltale manner indicative of your chakra affinity. Ninjutsu techniques that utilize your chakra affinity will be much easier for you to learn and will require less chakra to cast. They will also tend to be considerably more powerful than would otherwise be expected. An example, please, Naruto? Knowing just what to expect, Naruto gripped the slip of paper between his thumb and forefinger, channeling just enough chakra to cause the paper to react. His control was much improved. That's what mastering 17 different varieties of chakra control exercises will do for a guy, causing the paper to simply take on a silvery metallic sheen without expelling a huge amount of extra chakra as visible light. Naruto didn't stop with turning the paper into iron. A bit more chakra was applied and the transformed paper smoothly morphed into a kunai. Tenten's breath hitched and she leaned in close to examine the newly created blade, trying to discern what trickery or sleight of hand was involved. Chakra natures commonly fall into 5 categories: earth, fire, lightning, water, and wind. As Naruto demonstrated, there are, however, other chakra natures. Outside of a bloodline gift, only the most extraordinary circumstances imbue one with a non-standard chakra affinity. Tenten was still staring at Naruto's new kunai. He grinned and held it out to the girl, hilt first. You can have it if you want, Tenten. I didn't put much chakra into it, though. It might last a few more minutes. She accepted, but set it aside for the moment, determined to discover if she too had the kind of chakra that would let her turn stuff into weapons. Mimicking Naruto, Tenten gripped the paper between thumb and index finger. Her control was certainly better than Naruto's first attempt. There was no flare of visible chakra as the paper crinkled itself almost in half. Very nice, Tenten. You appear to possess a very powerful lightning affinity. When you learn elemental chakra conversion, your many weapons will become even more deadly. Tomorrow I will have a scroll prepared detailing a number of simple, but effective lightning-based ninjutsu that should be usable with your current chakra reserves. Tenten smiled radiantly. Thank you, sensei. Naruto nodded approvingly at the girl's form of address. He was liking her more already. All eyes soon turned to Neji. With a put-upon sigh and a small grimace, as if expecting it to burst into flames, the boy touched a single finger to the paper. It immediately crumbled into a small pile of dust. Earth-natured, a rarity among the Hyuga, if I'm not mistaken, Ebisu commented. As a frontline taijutsu specialist, your earth affinity, properly developed, will greatly expand your control of any battlefield. Though my repertoire of earth ninjutsu is not extensive, I will have no trouble preparing a scroll of techniques for you to begin with. Ebisu stood. We will break early today. Do not expect that to happen often. Please arrive at the Hokage Tower tomorrow morning no later than 7 a.m. Instructions delivered. He disappeared in a Konoha body flicker. Hey, that's sensei for ya. He might seem stuffy, but he's really cool once you get to know him. He didn't want Neji or Tenten to get the wrong idea about sensei. If you guys don't have anything important to do, I know a training ground that'll be empty. We can spar, or I can show you some chakra control exercises for your affinities. I have clan duties to attend to, responded Neji. Without further words, the Hyuga exited the room. Tenten did not look surprised by Neji's refusal of the offer. Don't mind Neji, he's always been a stick in the mud. This time last year, he probably wouldn't have bothered to give a reason before leaving. In another 5 or 6 years, he might be a real conversationalist. They shared a laugh at their departed teammates' expense. So how about it, Tenten? I've got a training ground all to myself and there's still plenty of daylight to burn. Lead the way, kiddo. Mom and Dad won't be looking for me till supper time. Kiddo? I'm only a year younger than you, Naruto whined. A passing Chunin instructor stuck her head into the room to bust the kids for playing hooky in the junk room, saw that they wore forehead protectors, and went on her way, just a couple of the recent grads lagging behind. Tenten moved to follow her pouting teammate, not forgetting to snag the miracle kunai. They hadn't even reached the stairs when the girl's close examination of the kunai. It was the proper weight, well balanced for throwing, and the edge was razor sharp. When it reverted to a piece of paper, then disintegrated into a puff of dust so fine it might as well have been smoke. She, awed at its loss. Told ya, old lady, Naruto said with a grin. Fine, fine, you win, Naruto. You're not kiddo if I'm not old lady. That'll work, I guess. Can Neji still be asshole? That's what I'm currently calling him in my head, since sensei would probably get annoyed if I said it aloud. Tenten giggled, looking much more like a young girl and not a trained ninja who had just been fawning over a well-made blade. This was going really well as far as Naruto could tell. His interactions with girls had been few and far between, but Tenten seemed a lot like the guys, except she giggled sometimes. Well, there had been that one time Kiba was talking about some magazine he'd found in the garbage. Poor Akamaru had finally resorted to ankle-biting to stop his human's weirdness. They walked in companionable silence for a few minutes before Naruto said, Sensei says you've got crazy good aim with your weapons. No need to mention his review of her academy files just yet. Yeah, they're my specialty, actually. I'm good with melee weapons, like Sensei said, but I'm really good with all kinds of projectiles. I had 100% accuracy on every throwing drill throughout the last 3 years at the academy. Tenten was rightly proud of her accomplishment. It was a record that would probably stand for years to come. Even though she didn't manage Rookie of the Year, her instructors were impressed enough to give her a small plaque, engraved with a pair of kunai and a shuriken stuck in a bullseye, commemorating her achievement. How do you feel about explosives? That question was odd and off-topic enough to draw a puzzled stare from the girl. Finally, she asked, You mean like explosive tags? Yep. I was thinking, Someone with your range and accuracy could be a real fiend in combat if you were flinging around exploding kunai. There was an exciting thought. Tenten smiled at the mental image of a horde of bandits, their bloodied remains lying burned and broken, courtesy of a few well-placed explosive tags. I know how to use them, we just covered that in class not too long ago. Mom and Dad wouldn't let me have any from the store, though. They're kinda expensive, and Dad kept going on and on about me losing an eye. That was slightly embarrassing to admit to her fellow ninja. Overprotective parents were a drag. Never fear, Uzumaki Naruto is here. Naruto thought with a silent cheer at the awesomeness he was about to unleash upon the world. He drew an unremarkable kunai from his weapon pouch and showed it to Tenten. See, just a normal kunai, right? He concentrated for a second, pushing chakra and imprinting a very specific pattern into the crystalline structure of the blade. The only outward change in the kunai was a small Uzumaki spiral mark that appeared at the base of its blade. Now it's an exploding kunai, just like a tag, but with shrapnel. It works the exact same way as a tag, too. Just prime it with your chakra, and you can set it to detonate in a few seconds or on command. Tenten froze, the implications of her teammate's feat rendering such things as walking totally unimportant. Naruto regarded his motionless teammate with concern. He really hoped he hadn't broken her already. Slowly, over the course of several seconds, Tenten sorta seemed to transform as Naruto watched. Her eyes lit up. Was that a chakra trick he'd never heard of? And the smile now decorating her face was positively scary. When she spoke, it was in a whisper that made Naruto's spine shiver. This is the start of a beautiful friendship, Naruto. They won't know what hit them. Whoever they were, Naruto pitied them. Guys, for now we'll end the story here. If you want part 2, make sure to leave a comment. I read every single one of your comments. You probably already know that from the likes on them. Alright then, I'm heading out. See you all in the next video.